Good evening and welcome to Fiddler's Green podcast number 74, The Communist's Daughters. I think that the microphone is working. I know that the super chats are working. Unfortunately, I still don't have the OBS plugin to display the super chats working, so we'll just have to fly by the seat of our pants. And this is going to be quite an episode because I am incredibly agitated right now. I'm just absolutely furious, and it has nothing to do with the topic of this live stream. Kind of unfortunately, it doesn't have anything to do with the topic of the live stream. Although I think I can kind of incorporate it. I don't do drama. I'm not going to give like a blow by blow or anything else like that. But the source of why I'm angry might have something to do with the topic that I decided to talk about a few days ago, which is communist daughters. It's a reference to, I mean, this is just totally going to separate the audience out between people who are younger millennials and Zoomers and people who are millennials who are older and Gen Xers, because people who are older millennials or Gen Xers will know that Communist Daughter was a track from an infamous indie album called The Airplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel, which, you know, you could probably do a whole podcast on the phenomenon that was that. I don't want to call them a one-hit wonder band, but they made one album at the end of the 90s and then they disappeared. And they spent the entire, like, the next 10 years was spent celebrating this album. And it wasn't even it wasn't like revolutionary. I mean, it was good. It was good, and it kind of prefigured 2000 indie music. But either way, the Neutral Milk Hotel song notwithstanding, the title, I just took that from the band to frame a conversation about women and communism and boomers and the moment we're on, which has nothing to do with the fact that I'm angry, which is kind of what I had to talk about for a few minutes, and then somehow segue into the larger conversation and bring it around towards the end on my thesis statement. But look, I'll say this. You know, how did my YouTube channel start? My YouTube channel started in 2016, 15, 16, somewhere end of 2015, early 2016, depending on how you count it. And the reason why it started is I was doing debates between myself and a bunch of edgy atheists in Seattle. This was the thing. I was like the Catholic guy who went and debated the atheists at the local atheist organization. That's what I did. That's what my hobby was when I wasn't doing math for my PhD. That's, you know, that was, and you know, this organization, they made recordings. They had this little minor dinky YouTube channel they uploaded to. But I had a written blog on the side where I, you know, explored various topics. It never got very many hits. This is before blogging was very big on Substack or whatever. If there were like, you know, a handful of blogs that did very well, but really the up and coming thing was YouTube. And after one debate, this guy, it was a very neutral debate too. It was a lecture I was giving about. It was called The Cult of Confidence, which was sort of my first YouTube video. I turned the speech into a video on my channel, and this really angry atheist guy just like digs into me for the question and answer session, and then afterwards he just comes and like just hurls insults at me for like 20 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I'm just taking it, and the moderator, the guy who was in charge of the atheist forum, said, "Man, Dave, like you're imperturbable. You don't get angry at all when people come after you with personal insults. You know, the insults are like you're fat, you're stupid, you're wrong, you're delusional, you're a religious fanatic, like all the ones." This guy was like 400 pounds, so you know, that last one didn't quite get to me. It didn't quite get to me, but the thing, you know. This guy's hurling insults nonetheless, and the moderator, the leader of the organization, he's like, "Man, you're really imperturbable. You're not like caught back by these insults at all. You should really do YouTube." And I thought, hey, what if I take this talk and put it on YouTube? And I'll start a YouTube channel that has the same name as my unpronounceable blog, which was never designed to be read out loud or said, which is the distributist or the data distributist or whatever. And, there you go. And I like to think that one of my assets, at least, in the first few years I was doing YouTube, was that it's really hard to piss me off. It's really hard to piss me off with insults because, whatever, it's the internet, right? People insult you all the time. You're lazy, you're fat, you're stupid, you're balding. I probably have a bald spot up there or something like that. You're a Christian fundamentalist. You're a heretic. You're not the right version of Christianity. You're an infidel, like whatever. Like, I don't really care. These are just words on the internet. That's fine. There's one, however, that always gets me. It really, really gets me. And not to get into the drama, the thing that gets me partially. First of all, I don't like people lying to me. I don't think anyone likes people lying to them, like just bold-faced lying to them. But I really hate people just looking me in the eye and just lying to me like this. Like, you have some relationship with me, you're making eye contact, and then you just lie. And there was this incident many years before. It was probably, what was it? Oh, that was like 6 years before I started my channel. I had gone to Turkey to visit some friends. And I told the story periodically. And, like everything in Turkey is a scam. We had walked into a few taxis that were like going super, like they were charging super fast, exorbitant rates for the ride, above anything you'd be expected to pay if you were a native there, and they get you all these ways in Turkey. And that's fine. Like that's they rip you off when you're a tourist. That's cost of doing business. That's what it is to be a European-looking tourist in a non-white country, specifically a Muslim country. That didn't get me. What really got me is this one incident where we were walking behind this group of shoe shiners, and everyone knows shoe shiners are scammers in Istanbul, right? This is a well-known thing. And we were walking behind this group of guys who were shoe shiners, and they dropped all of their equipment. And so me and my friend, we helped them pick the equipment up. And they're like, oh, we have to thank you. And I'm like, no, you don't have to thank me. And then they start shining my shoes. Like, they're tennis shoes. They don't need a shine. Are you kidding me? And like, I'm like, no, I don't want it. And like, he touched my shoe for 5 minutes. Or no, not even 5, like a minute. Like, because it's 30 seconds. I didn't want my shoe shined. It was useless. I pull my shoe back. He's like, oh, no, that's $50. The whole thing was a scam. And not only that, the only reason why I even let him touch my shoes is because I was helping him with his disaster he had when his equipment fell out of his backpack. And so the whole thing, the whole manufactured crisis was designed to get me to take pity on the man and give him a modicum of my charity. And then that charity was used to stab me right in the back. And the thing I remember to this very day, and I'll remember this to my dying day, while he was lying to me and thanking me profusely, he was looking me right in the eye. When you have bald-faced lying like that, I have a hard time forgetting it. But look, it is the internet. So, lying isn't necessarily something that I don't expect. It's just more or less par for the course. It's a lot worse when I think I know the person. Like, I think, and we all have parasocial relationships, but when they know friends of friends, I think that I have a relationship with them. I think I have an expectation of candor, an expectation of truthfulness. This is something that you'd expect people and online acquaintances to have. But even then, I don't get that angry. People lie to me. Look, I know we have to save face and all this. This is the internet. But good Lord, there's one kind of lie that I can't stand. And that is, you lie about something that I said, and then you accuse me of lying. And then you tell the internet that Dave Green is a liar, even though I can demonstrate that what you said is untrue. This is absolutely infuriating. I can't stand this. I can't stand this. I look. People come onto the internet for a variety of reasons. People come onto the internet for a variety of reasons, mostly for clout, mostly for drama, mostly to explore ideas. But I came on the internet because I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to pursue truth, and I wanted to get people organized in communities of trust. My entire brand, my entire mode of operation relies on an implicit amount of expected honesty coming from me about what I believe. That is the most important thing, is that I'm honest to you about what I believe and what I say. Now, does this mean I don't make mistakes? No. Does this mean I don't misremember things? No, I have a horrible memory, actually. You know that because I'm in academia, right? You know that I'm an academic, so I'm an absent-minded professor. I can't remember shit, right? I can't remember what we had for dinner yesterday. I can't remember. I can't remember. Well, I can remember the books I've read. I guess that's how you know I'm an academic. I can remember the books I read. I can't remember what the park I took my son to last time we went out. I can't remember all sorts of things. All sorts of things just kind of go by the wayside. And I certainly don't remember things that I said online in debates, right? And so I make mistakes, and I have to be humble. And sometimes, I misremember things and I say things the wrong way. And that means that I repeat untruths, and that's fine. Like, I have to apologize for that. Like, I owe you an apology. When I inadvertently lie, or when I'm unclear, I feel like I owe my audience an apology. But when people accuse me of lying by saying that I said something that I didn't, or saying that I didn't say something that I did and I can prove it, what the fuck do you want me to do? What the fuck do you want me to do? I can't stand this. I cannot stand this at all. It's like the Turkish guy staring me in the eyes and lying to me after I stopped and helped him so he could rip me off for $50. And he was staring me right in the eye. He's staring me right in the eye. And people, like, you demonstrate your innocence, and then they just keep on lying. They keep on lying that you're lying. I cannot stand this. It defeats the entire purpose of why I do this. I'm not here for entertainment purpose. I mean, I am here for entertainment. I'm sure you're all very entertained by how angry I am. But I'm not actually here for entertainment purposes. I'm here, hopefully, to drive the conversation online more towards truth and away from things that are absolute bullshit. I'm not here to have like a constant laugh at lol cows. I'm not here to stir up online drama. Maybe there's like a misunderstanding, because there's obviously people who are a lot less serious online. So maybe this is all a big joke, and they don't realize how serious I take these kind of things. Like, disagreements, I don't really fucking care. I don't care about disagreements. I don't care about disagreements. But I do care when you lie about me lying. It's not even like the same ballpark. It's not even the same game. It's kind of funny because the disagreement that we started off on, I'm not going to relitigate the drama, but it had to do with the various topic that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, kind of the communist daughter. The Neutral Milk Hotel song. What did that song actually mean? What did that song actually allude to? Well, that's kind of weird, because I always thought it was like a leftist girl. This is really strange. But when I was, this is going to be story night. You're going to have both Angry Dave and Story Dave at the same time. So I hear that's where I'm really entertaining. But at the time, I was dating this leftist girl, and I was really into Neutral Milk Hotel. I mean, I wasn't really into it, but this is like the height of it. This is the greatest masterpiece of all time, is The Airplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel. It's got two love songs on it. One is addressed to Anne Frank, which is actually kind of a good song. But it's so propagandized, in retrospect, that whole thing, making an indie album and have the kind of like love ballad. It's not like a love ballad, but it's a reference to Anne Frank, sung as if it were a love ballad, right? it's called Holland 1945, which is obviously Anne Frank, where Anne Frank was when she was kidnapped, abducted by the Gestapo or whatever, and it's a great. But the other one is this like vague reference to this leftist woman, and I was dating this leftist woman at the time, and I thought it was kind of weird that this song existed. And it was weird because the leftist woman I was dating at the time had this large obsession with early anarchist and leftist movements from the early 20th century. So this would be like Rosenberg in Germany, a variety of other anarchist thinkers or communist thinkers, and one of the people that she was really into, which is more of a controversial figure. I don't want to kind of characterize this as kind of indicative of this woman's work, was Simone Weil. Simone Weil. It's W-E-I-L. Yeah, Simone Weil, right? Simone Weil, right? Early feminist thinker, 20th century Christian thinker, but a highly progressive one too, and something of a communist in her early life in the 1920s. And I read the work, and then and she actually is a brilliant writer. I don't want to downplay this person's work. I think that Simone Weil she's controversial and she's challenging for Christians to read. She would be kind of the steelman version of the Christ demands that you sacrifice everything for this world and receive nothing. And she very famously died on some kind of implicit hunger strike. She died of malnutrition because she was so self-denying, kind of a very Buddhist personality. She was obviously a Jewish convert. You could kind of tell by looking at her. But one of the pictures I always remember kind of, convincing me that she wasn't exactly a saint was her early obsession with like communist movements. And her picture kind of like dressed up in this paramilitary Bolshevik outfits. And this woman is a privileged Jewish woman from a very rich family, and she's dressed up like a factory worker with a Bolshevik like little cap on, like doing like the send me in reporting for the revolutionary duty, absolute LARP. And so you think like, okay, like, is this woman actually a saint and a considered Christian, or did she get sucked up in this kind of idea that you had to die for the world? And this fascination you see in her later literature is an iteration of her earlier communist phase, which was not entirely abandoned even in her later work, if I understand the woman's biography correctly. And after that, I kept on kind of like looking at these radical women kind of askant and wondering how much of this communist thing that you're doing is a real ideological struggle, and how much of this is kind of like a fashion statement. How much of this is something that you're sucked into, that you're doing as kind of a side project. And of course, this is a distinction that is like very much apparent in our own crop of communists. Like obviously there's something like the eternal communism, and we'll discuss that. That's kind of the point of the talk. The eternal communism is kind of only one thing. There is one thing called leftism, and it's kind of sort of the same thing as communism. And inside all sorts of revolutionary or radical forms of leftism, there are essentially two sides to it. There is kind of a brutalistic, nihilistic, bio-Leninist side that is incredibly brutal and animalistic and almost demonic. And then there's this kind of like effeminate, we need to like die for the world, sacrifice everything, cut off your balls, Quirk Chungus, Simone Weil side to communism. And it always appears in two ways. And, arguably it's part of the same thing called communism, but there's a distinct North Pole and there's a distinct South Pole to this thing that we call communism. And I can't not notice it. And I'm noticing it everywhere I look. Everywhere I look, I see the communist daughter. Everywhere I look, I see the communist daughter. Or the communist daughters, to pluralize it, make it sound less like the Neutral Milk Hotel song. It's just everywhere I look. Probably should look at the slides. The two faces of communism. I guess I've already visited that slide, so why did I even go there? I don't know. Anyway. the modern world is kind of insane, and it's even crazier in the end of the sort of the end of discourse, the period of we're on a discourse platform and we can't do discourse. It used to be that I get into an argument with somebody on X, and then I'd invite them to a debate, and we'd set up the debate, and we would have the debate on the topic that we were arguing about. Now you get into an argument with someone on X, and they either rug pull you, they set up a debate time, and then they say, oh, I can't do it 2 hours or an hour before when you've already cleared your schedule. And for me, that's like, I don't have a lot of time to do this. Every time I do one of these live streams at night, my wife has to not do her work and watch the kid and put him down, right? Like, this is family man stuff. Like, I had to plan this in advance. If that happens, then we can't do other fun stuff. People like, this is, I don't like getting rug pulled, okay? It's forgivable. Like, we all have things that happen, but that's happened to me like, a few times now. Nowadays, like, no one shows up to debates. No one wants to do debates. No one wants to do discussions. The last times I proposed this, people have intentionally sabotaged these discussions of the original topic, either by rug pulling or, washing out, or by essentially putting so many personal attacks down that it makes it virtually impossible to discuss anything about the original topic except for the public personal attacks that have been made. The internet is insane. And, when I think about it, there are really only like 4 pillars of insanity. One has been kind of artfully removed because we're broadcasting from YouTube. So bear with me. And I won't touch on that one this time. I don't like talking about it because there's already too many people who talk about that one. But let's focus on the first 3. We'll be exposed to our mystery 4th question about the pillars of insanity on YouTube. The first one is the boomer question. The next one is the woman question. And the third one is the communist question. And I think that these are all part of the same cycle of decline. These are part of the same thing that is devouring everything in this absolute torrent of fucking fakeness out of everything. People don't do discussions because they don't want to risk having discussions. They don't want to risk having discussions because that risks them actually having to answer for what their positive ideas are on the world. If you're on X, you can just make fun of somebody and then run away. And most of the time they don't care. Like, oh, you can call me fat. I don't fucking care. You can call me bald. I don't care. You can call me stupid. I don't care. So they love doing this little, in the case of something, was a few months ago or a month ago, it was everybody is a teal Zionist plant. So like every single person that's in my personal friend group, from Aaron McIntyre to the guys at the OGC, the accusation was that they are all paid operatives of the J.D. Vance, or if I'm understanding this correctly, right? I'm paraphrasing this. If the people making these accusations were present, maybe they'd state them differently, right? I don't want to misrepresent them. I'm not trying to be dishonest, but I'm being a little facetious here, right? But the accusation was that all my friends, maybe me, were operatives of Peter Thiel to get J.D. Vance elected. And even though we were on the public record as being anti-Zionists, we were actually in secret double secret super Zionists. That was, and of course, does this ever get debated? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Like, the person is not going to come out on these accusations in a live stream. We're not going to have a discussion about what I believe and what he believes, or what Andy. It's not like there's one person. There's multiple people doing this. We're not going to have a back and forth about that. No, the accusation is going to be made, and then we're just going to forget about it. And the accusation is going to drive the drama algorithm, and then they can run away laughing. The reason is the internet has fully fallen into its post-discourse state. And we're just dealing with the consequences here, and you just have to kind of watch the crawling chaos sort of devour everything around you. The controversy I remember most, and this is, talk about manufactured controversies. There were 2 of them from last week that were particularly infuriating. It's funny, The way you create a controversy is you create a situation that requires a lot of nuance to solve. So last time we were doing this live stream, we were talking about the red button versus the blue button. This is I say it's like the prisoner's dilemma, but I'm using that colloquially. It's a game theory problem. It's a collective action problem. You press the blue button, and if less than 50% of the people press the blue button, you die. If you press the red button, nothing happens to you. And so if you have no faith that people will press the blue button enough, then by pressing the blue button, you're just committing suicide. And so it's stupid to press the blue button. But you know that somebody has pressed the blue button, so wouldn't you risk your life to save them just to get above 50%? This is an impossible question to answer without knowing the populations that are having this question put to them and what messages are being sent out beforehand. And so what's happening is you have two sides arguing over different things. It's the classic Rumi problem. You've got one side looking at the front end of the elephant, and they think that it is a giant trunk. And you've got people looking at the back end of the elephant, and they think that it's a giant wall. And, they're blind men, so they can't see the whole elephant. And this is how you juice the algorithm for content, right? And there are a variety, and I'm tired of these things. These things are actively pissing me off because I feel like every time I participate in it, I've fallen for it. Every time I participate in these conversations, I'm falling for the exact thing that people are baiting me into, and I hate getting baited. I hate getting baited. I feel like the entire atheist period, the entire period of new atheism was just a long line of atheists baiting Christians. And these meme disagreements are another version of people baiting me. I don't know which one to do first. Travel Dinks or Dave Ramsey? Let's do Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey, financial expert. Pull up your bootstraps, young Zoomers, and get financially savvy. People call into his show, and he gives them a good talking to about how their spending habits are irresponsible, and you need to pay off your debts. Woman calls in. She's in a long-term relationship with a man who's earning $250,000. She has $90,000 of student debt. I don't know how on earth you get $90,000 of student debt. Most student debt is more around like $20,000 or $30,000 for, a reasonable. Did she go like Bard College or one of these like high-priced private schools that just charges you full tuition? I mean, $90,000. Good Lord. What is going on? What is going on? Okay, but who cares? Who cares? Because her boyfriend, her live-in boyfriend who's paying her rent is earning $250,000. And he says, look, I'd marry you, but I'm not going to pay off $90,000. You have to deal with the debt. And then she calls into Dave Ramsey and goes, Dave Ramsey, isn't it so mean that my boyfriend is forcing me to pay off my $90,000 of debt even while I'm living in his house rent-free? And Dave Ramsey's like, you gotta dump her. You deserve better than this guy who earns $250,000. All that stuff about bootstraps, all that stuff about how you have to pay back your college debt, out the window, because his girl dad brain is activated and he's about to lay down the law. On paper, this is a total double standard. Because everyone knows that Dave Ramsey does not expect men who are $100,000 in debt to have their girlfriends pay it off as a precondition for them marrying them. That would never be accepted. Let alone the fact that he's paying her rent, and thus all her income is effectively disposable income. So double standard. Subtext, and this is what makes it controversial. What makes it controversial is that obviously this man has no intention of marrying this woman. And he has no intention of marrying this woman has nothing to do with her debt load. If he earns $250,000 a year, $90,000 of debt is nothing. It is very, very payable unless they live in the most expensive area of New York possible and have no other financial income or acumen beyond just the income from the prospective husband. It would be highly irresponsible for a husband not to pay his wife's debt. The reason why he's not paying is that he doesn't want to marry her. And this is just a giant game. So, in effect, Dave Ramsey's advice for the daughter to dump the guy is accurate, but it has nothing to do with debt. It has everything to do with the signals that are going on underneath it. So, because there are two ways of looking at this Escher painting, the two sides on Twitter can argue over it endlessly. They never have to make any kind of conclusion because there's two ways of looking at the same problem. And the same thing is true for the travel dinks. Oh, the travel dinks. The travel dinks, because everyone's now worried about birth rates and about finances, what could be better than advertising that you blew all of your disposable income on idiotic vacations? And that's exactly what we get. So halfway through last week, was it? This new ad drops. And this is obviously an ad. These we all know how this works. We're getting baited. These are rage bait things that people do to get you angry and get you interested in this kind of product. So maybe this is all fake, but it's this couple, this Quirk Chungus and Manchild couple. Literally looks like Manchild and Quirk Chungus. The woman is in her late 20s. The guy looks younger than his girlfriend. And they're sitting there going, people say we should have kids or our life will have no meaning. But we found plenty meaning never having kids. And they look at each other and they smile. And they go to their bookshelf. And it's like this line of pastel, useless consumer item books where it's color-coded books that correspond to every one of the continents and places. And when you flip through the glossy magazine books, it's just them taking selfies, eating food, doing duck faces in front of bowls of noodles, as my friend the Franklin once said back when he had a channel of a different name. I really miss that guy. But that's neither here nor there. It is DINK consumerism, DINK standing for dual income, no kids, for you people who are not elder millennials like myself. It is DINK consumerism at its highest level. You couldn't get more dinky than this. And of course, it is rage bait. Like, how are people, like, what? Travel is such a scam. It used to be kind of affordable, and we'll get into that. Now, it is absolutely unaffordable, and it's not even very good. People go to these places and they're all tourist traps. They're all the same set of restaurants. You're not going to have, like, if you went to Turkey these days, not like 10 years ago, it would be roughly the same. It would be just like a hotel experience. It would be like going to Paris with slightly different food. It used to be people went to these exotic locations to have very different experiences. These days, they go to these exotic locations as an excuse to spend money on themselves. All vacations these days have become kind of like Disneyland vacations. And so, this is, it's obviously rage bait. It is obviously an ad. It's obviously proposing something that is spiritually poisonous, aka spending the money on yourself and not on your posterity, not on having children. That's obviously what's going on, but I've known a lot of couples that have thought just like this. I know the real story of couples like this, and it's not, people. There's a lot of rage at the DINK ad, and it was all directed at the woman in particular because she was the one, presumably, who was putting off her vocation to have children. The couples like this that I've known, the story has been very, very different. This is what's happened. Woman has kind of a traumatic early 20s. She goes through her early 20s and either dates an abusive man or has a series of highly emotionally traumatic relationships that don't work out the way that she thought. And they leave her somewhere around 26, feeling very destitute. And then one or two things happen. She gets an unfortunate medical diagnosis that convince her that it will either be very hard to have children or impossible to have children, in which case now she has to deal with the fact that she's not going to have a family in the traditional sense. Or alternatively, she decides for whatever reason that no man is going to be the man that I want to have raise my children, either because the abuse of previous relationships have convinced me that all traditional relationships are abusive, or because I am, as the red pillars say, alpha widow. The guy that I wanted to have that traditional relationship with has moved on to other things. And she convinces herself through feminism that she doesn't want to have kids at 26 when she certainly could if she made some life adjustments. Then she tags on a much younger guy, or a guy that's a few years younger than her. And this guy doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He's never thought about having kids. In all likelihood, this is one of his first relationships, if not his first relationship. And he's like, hot dog, I get to be this older woman, slightly older woman's like boy crush, and we get to pool our incomes together and get to spend everything on just consumption. And the relationship never goes to marriage. Or if it does go to marriage, it's a marriage that feels, and I know if you've lived in blue areas, you've seen relationships or marriages that feel like the couple still is boyfriend, girlfriend. They just kind of formalized it and had a big party for their relatives. And they have that kind of relationship until something happens with the man or the woman. I've seen this story before. I've seen it so many times before. So many times. And it changes. Sometimes it's the woman deciding that alpha wielder or not, traumatized or not, I want to have kids. And the guy's like, whoa, that wasn't in the equation. That's rare. I've only seen that a few times. And then they divorce or whatever, get split up. More commonly, however, this younger guy hits his 30s, hits his stride professionally, and goes, hey, I want to have a family. We've got tons of disposable income. And the woman's already well past her fertility window or has written it off for other reasons. And actually, most of the time, she's not past her fertility window. Most of the time, what's happened is she has dedicated her life, and most of the time, she's not even infertile. Most of the time is she decided when she was 25 that she didn't want to have kids. And then she's been reading antinatalist literature for 10 years, convincing herself that having children is a crime against feminism and the environment and white supremacy or whatever. Like, having children is irresponsible for her progressive values. And she says no. And the guy says, well, I want to have kids. And then the relationship goes downhill from there. And it's fucked up. And in many ways, it's the woman who's victimized by this whole situation. People are using consumer products as a kind of tonic, a kind of pain relief for the spiritual confusion that's been hoisted upon them by elements of modernity in one form or the other. And you have to watch it knowing that that's on the horizon. You can't say that one of you is going to want to have a family. You can't say that because that violates that's playing into traditional stereotypes. Society can't exist in a way where people treat having children as another consumer choice. That's not how we can frame marriages. It's not how we can frame conversations about the relationships between men and women. But somehow we've entered into a space where that's the only way we can talk about it. Everyone realizes that this is what's going on. Everyone understands how perverse this is, but no one can actually take steps to stop it. Because taking steps to stop it would go against the reigning notions of people like Dave Ramsey and the rest of our well-off boomers who run our society. I've been trying to think like boomers. Man, you're getting stories tonight. Man, you're getting stories tonight. And one of the most influential movies on my My modern understanding of the universe is a really shitty movie. I was living in Portland at the time, and I had just returned to religion, kind of. I was like, in that kind of holding position. I didn't really know where I was. I hadn't kind of formally gone to confession on the sacramental route back to the Catholic Church, but I kind of believed all the things theologically, that kind of position. And at the same time, I was kind of like dating wise, I was kind of out of my dry spell years. I don't know. A lot of men have them, right? A lot of men have these like extended dry periods in their early 20s. Like for me, that was like the last 3 years of college. And, that was gravely over, I guess the communist daughters I dated notwithstanding. So I'm just like on the version one iterations of the dating apps. And back then, was it Match.com and OkCupid had just come on the scene. And that was like the new one everyone was talking about. Now I'm dating all of these women, and this is Portland, Oregon. And based on the fact that my preferences are kind of nerd coded, I'm dating a lot of women who have like the same hobbies that someone would like. You like books, you like philosophy, you like politics, you like board games, you like interesting indie movies, and you put this all on your OkCupid profile. And I've talked to Walt Bismarck about this. He's found out a way to make this work, but he's also found out a way to make this work with women who are significantly younger than the women I was dating in this cohort, right around the beginning of the Great Awakening in Portland, Oregon. And so you get, back in the day, these kind of bohemian preferences, to not put too fine a point on it, led me into a lot of debates with women who were just like out and out super progressives. And I was edging away from progressivism hard. I had voted for Barack Obama a few years earlier, but certain elements, and this was the first Obama administration, right? We weren't even in the Great Awakening properly. This was still in the hope and change. I am a president for all Americans, Barack Obama. This is not in the Trayvon Martin era of Barack Obama. And so, I date these women, and okay, this is obviously a Zoomer stereotype. This is obviously something that they complain a lot about now, but it was novel at the time. I go on these dates with these women, and it's very hard to get dates, right? Because coffee dates Zoomers will recognize this, right? But this is new at the time. Early 2000s, coffee dates were good enough. It's amazing to imagine it, but like going out for coffee was not an insult to a woman in 2007. This was an expected first date. It was not frowned upon before the financial crisis. In 2011, 12, that started not to be enough. If you took women out to coffee, they'd look down on you. And furthermore, when you got to the date, it would be like a job interview. They'd be grilling you on whether you liked your job. They'd be grilling you on how much money you make. They'd be grilling you on where you saw yourself in 5 years. And then all the while, they'd be bragging about ex-boyfriends and travel and crazy things they've done and like costume parties, all of this. Like they would be flexing at you and then grilling you on your requirements. Like you could see the little checkbox in their head going ching, 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 ching. And the number one of all of those were the political checkboxes. Now, I learned originally to just put like, I don't care about Roe v. Wade, even though I was pro-life. I had newly switched over to being pro-life in my heart of hearts. But for dating purposes, I just said, I don't care, neutral, don't ask me about it. I avoided that question. But they would always grill me on these points of feminism, progressive orthodoxy, political correctness. Are you one of the good people? Good as defined by my college professors. I guess I got my master's degree a year before, but the same idea. Man, these dates were the least romantic dates I can ever remember going on. They weren't they weren't even fun. They like usually it's like the boomer conception of dating in the boomer imagination. Dating is just like, well, you go on dates and maybe this will be the one and you'll fall in love with them and it will be like a fairy tale, right? It'll be like a fairy tale. Or alternatively, no chemistry and you'll just have fun together like friends would. That's not how these things fucking were. They weren't. They were like job interviews, staring down the most insufferable people I remember from my college years. And I'd have to think of a good date idea. But I originally, the back then movies were actually cheap, but movies weren't very interesting, right? If you took a date to a blockbuster, that wouldn't really show off your personality. So eventually I'm like, okay, well, a good date is a movie in kind of like an indie movie theater. They show weird things that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And that is a better idea sometimes, unless the indie movie turns out to be a real bomb. And like it's really artsy and she doesn't understand it and she has a very negative experience. And given how these women were approaching these dates in a mercenary way already, the fact that this is that this was a bad experience was a further tick down on your little checkbox. But I eventually found the perfect movie going experience for first dates, and that was short films. So I would always look for film festivals. First of all, they were pretty cheap. You can tell this is before 2013. Hipster film festivals were always cheap. And they usually had one or two good films. And if one of the films were bad, there'd be another one right afterwards. So it wouldn't be a uniformly bad experience. And there'd be a conversation starter afterwards during dinner, like which ones did you like, which ones didn't you like? Something other than her eternal checklist of what meets sufficient qualifications for the role of husband. Anything to get rid of that. Good Lord. But the best time period to do the film festival was the Academy Awards season. The reason is because the movie theaters would run the Academy Award-winning short films. So now, as opposed to getting random student films, which were mostly bad with the occasional good one, you could go to a series of short films and they would all be bangers, wall to wall. And my favorite one beyond that was the animated Academy Award-winning shorts, because you got some pretty good stuff there. Like Disney would always put in a submission. There'd be like a Pixar one, and girls love Pixar. They love Pixar back in the day. I don't know what the opinion of these young women of Pixar is these days. It's probably more, I don't think diner goths like A Bug's Life or whatever or Up, but this was a thing for millennial women. And even now and again, you get like one from Japan or Miyazaki or something like that, or a really weird European one. It was great. It was great. I remember taking a date to one of these films after getting kind of grilled by these things. And what was playing was a Disney short film about like a How I Met Your Mother thing. It's this one right here. It's this short film about a guy working in an office and he falls in love with a secretary working in the office across the building. And it was like so cute and so lovely and such a picturesque way of how two people could actually come together. Like that actually liked each other. I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing in this reality? I mean, I don't expect first dates to look like Disney movies. I'm not saying I have to be like Amelie, but I'm not even moving towards that thing. This is a different game entirely that we're playing. Everything in the boomer imagination seems to be imbued with this kind of surreality that hangs over everything. Everything has these rose-tinted glasses, and it'll filter out any objection from coming to you. The only reason why you don't have these great interactions with women is you're not pulling up your bootstraps hard enough. The only reason why the world sucks is we're not grinding into our jobs long enough. It is kind of interesting. I'm going to see if I can't write anything about it. I'm halfway through my essay for this week on Substack, and I've got to start writing my speech for the Old Glory Club conference coming up in 3 weeks. So I got to get cracking on that. So this will have to wait. But it's interesting just how locked into nostalgia we are. There's a video game that came out this week called Mixtape. And it's so utterly bizarre because you can't talk to progressives. They don't see the world the same way that you do. They don't see the world the same way that you do, but it's just so close. The language of common experience is right there, and you can reach out and you can touch it. And you can say, I see what you like about this thing. Can't we use this as a basis? But at the same time that you're looking at this thing and you know what you like about this thing and you know what they like about this thing, the story you're telling about this thing are two very different stories. Mixtape's an example of that. Mixtape is a vanity project, obviously made by some very rich person, because it's a walking simulator that recreates the 90s in kind of like this stencil art, highly stylized way that modern indie games do it. I haven't played the game. I hear my friend Poe, the person, has played it. I haven't had time to watch the stream, but you get the idea from the clips about what it is. It's a simulation of what it would be like to live in the 90s. Now look, I lived through the 90s in junior high school. I kind of remember that period. It was, I wasn't a high schooler in the grunge era. But it didn't feel like that much of a different world. And, this game basically just highlights the elements that every high schooler kind of had native to them, like jamming in your friend's car to some song or the other. I definitely have had that experience. Or kind of like going on joyrides or doing crazy shit on your free time during the summer. And of course, the reason why I said that some rich person made this is it features actual grunge music from the era with indefinite licenses. So that, for the uninitiated, it's very hard to get those licenses from music companies. They guard them very closely. So if you are a person from this era and you have nostalgia for liquid television, MTV's shows, and you remember things like Daria and Aeon Flux and The Max. I actually like that one a lot. That was a great little miniseries. And you're like, oh man, I got to pick these things up on DVD. You'll have a damn hard time finding them. And the reason is because it was on MTV. They had a part-time license to play those shows with popular music that was owned by 1,000 different companies. And in order to get those DVDs re-released, they have to compute how much of those songs were played on each of the portions. And that's like a legalistic nightmare, which is why it's so hard to find find popular shows that ran on MTV inside DVD collections or inside streaming services, which is a similar problem. That stops those kind of 90s shows from being re-released for popular consumption. That's why it's very hard to find these things if you were to go on Netflix. This video game they've bought those rights outright. The thing that stops Daria from being regularly available on Netflix was just outright bought by the people who made this game. It must have cost them a fortune. And what did they get from this endeavor? They got essentially a walking simulator that's an homage to like how it was like to have friends and be kind of a rebel in the 90s. Now, of course, this is undertaken with no self-awareness whatsoever. Someone said, this is the kind of game that someone who never had any friends would make about having friends. And look, that is like a great dig at Mixtape. I really do sympathize, because the people who are probably playing Mixtape are women who essentially had their high school years destroyed by COVID. And we took it from them. I mean, the government took it from them. But they have to have a way to cope, and their way to cope is creating a simulated version of the 90s. Now, the big problem with Mixtape is there isn't a damn thing in Mixtape that you couldn't do as a middle class kid now. Look, I know gas is more expensive. I know eating out is expensive, and we'll cover that later. But you could kind of live the general beats of this story. Like, so why isn't it? And more than that, it used to be that this story was kind of universally romantic. So why is it that we're viewing this story through nostalgia goggles when we should be viewing them in the first person? We should be looking for anthems that help us out of the situations that these kids face rather than simulating the conditions in which they operate under. That's the critical question. Well, the obvious answer is that we know what comes after Mixtape. Mixtape is a rebellion that leads nowhere. Mixtape is a rebellion that leads to the LGBTQ movement. I guess I can't help but give another stories. But there was this great band, one of the last grunge bands of the 90s. Really a transitional band. Still good. I might write an essay on this, so I guess I'll just plagiarize myself. But the band was called Tegan and Sarah. Not really a band name. Like Simon and Garfunkel. It was, but unlike Simon and Garfunkel or the White Stripes, the two members of Tegan and Sarah were actually twin sisters. They came from, I want to say, Toronto. If they didn't come from Toronto, they smelled like Toronto. I've lived in BC, Victoria, and Montreal extensively. And I used to go to Windsor all the time when I went to school in Michigan. So I guess I could say I'm very aware of Canada. I've never lived in Toronto. I've only been in and out of the city a few times for conferences and that. But I can still smell what Toronto smells like. It smells like Scott Pilgrim. It smells like lesbians, like real lesbians, like granola people, Volkswagen people, Subaru people. That's what Toronto is like. And this band, Tegan and Sarah, smelled like Toronto. And they were great. They were amazing. They were the last band that really kind of captured the grunge spirit. Now, this is a female band, right? So like the Cranberries. Well, the Cranberries is a bad example. Like Alanis Morissette. They have grunge elements in their music that were mixed with kind of like heartbreaking love stories about drama going on in their lives. And Tegan and Sarah, they both wrote their own songs, and they both were kind of equally good songwriters. I guess that makes sense that they were identical twins. They were so good at isolating emotion and anger and hurt as people would remember it from having a crush as a teenager. They capture the emotion perfectly. And it's still good. It still holds up. If you listen to So Jealous, or If It Was You, or The Con, that's a later one, it still comes through. It still holds up, I would argue. And when I remember hearing that music in the day, I said, this just isolates a very personal emotion. This kind of proves that even though the grunge era is well past done, Kurt Cobain had killed himself 7 years before these girls had released their first album, if memory serves me correctly. Even though the era of grunge is over, this shows you that this is an eternal form for expressing something true about life and life as a young person. The problem is that everyone else grew up and Tegan and Sarah didn't. They had kind of like this LGBT kind of, Toronto LGBT kind of feeling to them. That was their shtick. I've already said that. And that was kind of cool. But then every single person kind of became like an iteration of Tegan and Sarah going throughout the 2000s. And they kept being like that. They kept on being these kind of people who got crushes, who were in people didn't say polycules back then. That's an invention of the 2010s. But who were in like these hookup type relationships that were constantly breaking up and reforming. And they had early marriages and divorces, and they were constantly coming out about different sexualities. And it was, oh my God, it's so dramatic. It's now this is the new love season, right? I finally discovered myself and discovered my true love. And here is the story. We got over that, or some of us got over that. Some of us were moving through life and passing through this. Other people got frozen in the state of eternal adolescence, including Tegan and Sarah themselves. I mean, there are more recent stuff. When I saw this, I went back and listened to them. And it's really good. It's really well written. But it still sounds like the lyrics come from the mind of a teenager. There's this line about like stepping out, right? I was stepping out to feel seen or something like that. This is always the thing, like, I'm not unfaithful, but I'll stray. These are women, right? Like they're always framing the breaking up their relationship because they don't feel seen. And they need to have a validation and stuff like that. This, when I was a teenager, hit like, these are wild and free spirits. By the time I was in my 30s, I'm like, I have seen multiple women destroy families by thinking this way. I've even seen men destroy families thinking this way. This isn't funny. This isn't cute. Stepping out on your long-term partner when you're in your early 40s is not like a prelude to a love song. It is a personality problem that you should feel deeply ashamed of. But we have Mixtape. I don't feel like kids are being encouraged to process their young adult years through expression in a video game. I feel like I'm watching somebody try to simulate an eternal adolescence and then project that into the world that I currently live on. A total inability, a total life revolved around consumerism. I guess I'm switching back and forth between these two topics. Like you got the women and you've got the boomers. You got the women and you've got the boomers, but they're related. Because on top of the Dave Ramsey thing, who is that economic? He's Stephen O'Leary. Maybe that's not his first name. Someone O'Leary. I don't want to check Twitter while I'm in this monologue, while I'm on a roll. But he was going on today about, you kids, all you have to do is brown bag all of your lunches throughout your 20s, and you'll be able to save thousands of dollars, and with compounding interest in a Roth IRA, you guys will be rich by the time you're our age, or blah, 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 blah. Like, we never ate out. We never actually did anything fun. We didn't define our lives around consumerism. I call it brown bag boomerism. Brown bag your lunches forever. And every time, it's so funny, right? It's so funny when you think about it, because I don't know what causes this phenomenon. I see Isaac Young in the chat. I see you're a super chat. We'll get to that. But you're a critical part of this story, Isaac. You got to help me here. I do not know where these people come from, because they know that they're not telling the truth. Every single older millennial and Generation Xer is acting like they never, ever, ever, ever went to restaurants. Restaurants are for rich people. We didn't go to like restaurants. We didn't eat out at like dive bars. We didn't go to food trucks. We didn't buy things. We didn't buy cars. Were you kidding me? A car payment? Don't you know that could go into a Roth RIA or a compounding interest? We didn't do any of those things. All we did was brown bag our lunches and go to work and grind away. It's manifestly false. I know that restaurants weren't for the top 5%. It feels like it now. I take my family to Olive Garden, and it feels like I'm splurging. And Olive Garden isn't any noticeably more expensive or less expensive than a fast food joint. They're all the same price now. They're all the same price. They all take you for an enormous amount of money to feed a very small family. And all the while, people are telling me that no one defined their life by consumerism. People are raving about Mixtape in the background, where the entire teenage childhood is defined by consumerism. They're eating out all the time. They're buying CDs. They're buying electric guitars. They have their own car. Make this make sense, boomers. And you know this is false. And yet every time I do not know what they get out of doing this. But the boomers and the people pretending to be boomers, mostly Gen Xers, you guys got to shape up. You're eating out? That's crazy. We got to put our big boy pants on and never have any consumption. And the thing is that they are technically right. They are technically right. I'm sorry, Zoomers. You don't have the money anymore. You can't afford this lifestyle. I can't afford this lifestyle anymore. I can't afford the lifestyle of my parents, and neither can you. And I'm sorry that we caught the tail end of this experiment in consumer prosperity for the middle class, but it is obviously over. Congratulations, people who are spiritually boomers. You're right about that. You're right about that, but you're wrong about everything else, including the underlying idea that this has not been a change. It has not always been like this. It has not always been like this. And I'm tired of pretending that it is. So we have the female delusion, the expectations of everything being handed to them. Obviously, the critical thing here is, for all the people who are celebrating being girl bosses and using all of their money on travel, mostly female, I never hear any of the boomers tell women not to spend money on consumer products. Why are you buying that makeup? Doesn't it go into a Roth IRA? Why are you going to Molly? Shouldn't that money go into your 401k? Don't you know about compounding interest on that trip to Africa and those pastel books, your color-coded bookcase of mostly selfies and animal porn? I have never heard that in my life. All of that disapprobation gets targeted exclusively at young men. It gets targeted exclusively at boy dollars. Boy dollars and girl dollars. Boy dollars and girl dollars. I remember hearing complaints about this, but it's absolutely true. And this is not something that we can ever change. I'm not saying this we need to change how we think about money. I think that the difference between girl dollars and boy dollars is baked into our psychology as Homo sapiens. This can't change. And what is it? I've gotten ahead of myself. What's the difference between girl dollars and boy dollars? Well, that is this implicit assumption about who owes what anything. So women take care of the things that they need to take care of that are their explicit responsibilities. And those explicit responsibilities are, they're usually child and elderly care. But let's not be self-parodies of trads at this point, right? We don't want to self-parody the trad movement. Women did work inside and outside the home before the Industrial Revolution. They did do minor work in the fields. I don't think they did the major plowing. They did a little bit on the side. They certainly did the seed planting. And they worked. But how women worked was this. Women, you take care of your explicitly enumerated responsibilities to children first, then to the elderly, then to your husband, then to your chores. But once you get done with the care for all of those things, all of the excess stuff you have is for yourself in the form of self-care. Self-care. Okay. But for men, it is different. Men have an equal number of responsibilities. Men have an equal number of responsibilities and an equal amount. Typically, this is the great lie of fair play feminism. Typically, and it's also the great lie of some of the MGTOW and men's rights movements. For the most part, men and women spend the same amount of time working throughout history. There's not largely been a difference in how we've divided up work. Now, there's been a big difference in how we divide up liquid capital, or AKA explicit money that can be used to buy things like Roth IRAs or 401ks or stocks or assets. That has changed, but the total amount of hours worked as divided between the sexes has remained largely in proportion to each other. Sometimes they edge each other out. On a statistical level, I'm not saying that there can't be unfair arrangements in any given marriage. There are, but for every one woman ahead, there's a man ahead, and there's no gender that's taking advantage of the other, regardless of what the female group chats are assuring you is the case. That is very likely not actually true. Okay. So that being said, women get to spend all of their money after they get done with all of their time and all of their resources, after they're done taking care of their core responsibilities on themselves in the form of self-care. Your responsibility is to take care of yourself psychologically, cosmetically, getting rest, getting beauty sleep. You have to take care of yourself for the good of the tribe. And the society is set up so that the woman is going to have some surplus, but she's not going to have like a ton of surplus. It's not going to go into conspicuous consumption because there's not that much money for conspicuous consumption. For the man, it's a little bit more complicated. He gets done with his work and his direct responsibilities, working the same amount of time as a woman. But there's one barrier between him and his leisure time, right? And the secret shift, if I wanted to steal a term from feminists, is his collective responsibility to ensure the security of his family and his tribe. Now, if the tribe is secure and everyone has enough money and everyone has all of their needs met, which rarely happens in history, then he can go straight on to leisure time. But if there's any sense that there could be danger or uncertainty financially, he has to dedicate his time to doing as much as he reasonably can be expected to do to ensure that his collectivity, his people, have the best chance of survival in the future. This is why male hobbies piss women off. People say this in red pill spaces. Male hobbies piss women off, and they kind of do. And they definitely hate to see you napping. All women hate that. Luckily, I don't ever sleep, so it's not a big problem for me. I mean, if I slept, I wouldn't have a blog, right? I'm laughing, but I'm very angry. Sure. In periods of uncertainty, where we're not just living like teenagers and all the big picture items are taken care of, men are expected to use most of their free time, if not all of their free time, to try to ensure the tribe's collective survival. Now, there is broad leeway on these missions. Religion ensures the tribe's collective survival. Trying to look after financial resources ensures your tribe's survival. Doing art actually does that too, in a roundabout way. Sports, and this is something that a lot of people like John Carter and James Kirkpatrick, I don't know what name he's going by. You know, he's the guy that blogs at American Renaissance or vlogs at American Renaissance. I never know what name I should be calling him because I feel like he's changed his alias. You know, he has the show. He has that show. What is it? I call it Identity Politics. I don't want to steal his ideas. You know, but sports were considered to be kind of a ceremonial thing people did for the health of the tribe, right? So that's not a superfluous hobby. So if your hobbies actually plausibly contribute to the tribe's well-being, and politics is certainly one of them, then they register as you taking responsibility for the good of the tribe. If they're completely self-indulgent or just self-care, women perceive that as you not taking responsibility of the tribe's well-being in the future. Hence, the difference between girl dollars and boy dollars. Girl dollars are for self-care, and boy dollars are for the collective security of the tribe. And, you know, boy leisure has to be used on hobbies that are actually productive hobbies. Now, you can have a crackpot idea on what's productive, and women are very forgiving with that. But have a hobby that's not even plausibly productive, like napping, and that tends to piss them off because baked into our skulls as Homo sapiens is this difference between what girls and boys should be using their excess resources on. There's a barrier, and after you've done enough of your productive responsibilities extracurricularly to ensure collective well-being, then you can have like your half an hour to an hour of video games or, painting a Warhammer thing or whatever. But the majority of your time that is not allocated to direct responsibilities and the majority of your money not directly allocated to critical items has to go to the big picture of where we're going to be in the future. That's how humans naturally see things. And boomers do too, but they can't admit it. And so we're stuck into this bizarre hypocrisy where boomers don't seem to register or even kind of direct their advice. Yeah, I see the guy's name in the chat, guys, of the guy who does identity politics. I don't know if that is a dox or not, so I'm not going to say that name. But sorry, I got derailed there. But just be careful about using people's names in chats that I don't know if they are out there. I don't censor the chat or anything. Just, be courteous. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. The boomer advice is massively misdirected because they're constantly going to people with less disposable income at this stage and yelling at them about how, they don't just subsist on apples and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches throughout the entire month. Whereas they're excusing people's trips to Molly, these women's trips to Molly, as an element of self-care. No one's going to buy that. No one's going to buy that because we don't think about the political question properly. And this is the big failure of the boomers. They think like money is money and money is for spending. Your pleasure is for yourself. And it doesn't matter what other people have. It just matters what you have. And if you don't have enough, you haven't worked hard enough or whatever. But they don't understand that money works in an ecosystem. Money works in an ecosystem. And if one gender has all the girl dollars and one gender has all the boy dollars, and there's no expectation that the people with the girl dollars have to marry or procreate with the people with the boy dollars, then the girl dollars are going to go to eternal self-care and the boy dollars are going to be ground into oblivion. No one's going to invest when they have no prospect of a family. But I've got a better test. This is another controversy here. Someone posted 7 days ago on X, image from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. This is a place where I have a lot of memories, and they say, well, thanks to the changes that happened during the Great Awakening, I think it was about 10 years ago, if you're on EBT, AK welfare, you get to go to museums like Monterey Bay Aquarium for free. For free. And of course, look at these prices and you probably can't see them. But the tickets cost $50. They cost $30 for children. That means if you take a family of 5 or even 4, you're looking at about $200 for this trip to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I can't easily swing that. I mean, your guys are being generous with the super chats, but I need money for food and for taxes and rent and all this stuff. This would be hard for me to do. It's funny because when I was a kid, we didn't live next to Monterey. No one really does. It's a little bit out there from most major population centers. You have to drive for about an hour or so. But this was a popular vacation spot. This is a popular long weekend, like Memorial Day weekend. That's where you would go. You go to Monterey. Perfect place. Seals everywhere, otters everywhere, and of course the highlights, the aquarium. My parents did not sweat a drop about the price for the aquarium. It was dirt cheap. You could get a family in there for like $30 because the tickets were $10. The tickets were $10. And now they're pushing to hundreds of dollars, which means that something that would be a no-brainer for a weekend trip becomes not prohibitive. Look, we don't go to Monterey that often. I might take the family out to see that, but it would hurt. It would hurt. And the problem is that other people are getting in for free. So hypothetically, if you're just doing weekend trips, you always need something to do on the weekend with kids. Hypothetically, people on welfare could go to Monterey Bay Aquarium every weekend with their kids. Like they could have a family of 5. They're on EBT. They get straight in every weekend. They just go to Monterey Bay Aquarium again and again and again. And you'd have to, as a person in my position who presumably earns more money than them. Well, I know I earn more money than them. I have a day job. I work 50 hours a week. I'd have to save for that. I couldn't afford taking my kids to Monterey Bay Aquarium every weekend. And of course the comments like, you don't go to Monterey every weekend. Of course I don't. But there's 1,000 things like this. There are 1,000 things like Monterey Bay Aquarium that I pay for that no one else does. All of the state museums are like this right now. If you are on EBT, you get all of that free. There's Section 8 housing. When I lived in New Jersey, I lived between Trenton and Princeton. And that's a really weird place to be because Princeton is one of the richest communities in the entire United States, and Trenton is one of the poorest and blackest. So it's a really weird place to be. And the apartments there, and we had to rent, which was, terrible. They kept on raising the rent on us. And so in this apartment complex, you'd have like DINKS that both were doctors. You'd have me as a professional with a PhD. You'd have all these tech guys, and they go to work, they come home, and half their income goes to rent because the rent keeps on raising and raising and raising and raising. And you want to live in a safe neighborhood. You don't want to live in Trenton proper, I assure you. You don't want to see what a cheap rent would be like in Trenton. If you have young kids, certainly not. So you're paying this rent to stay out of those neighborhoods. But a significant amount of this rent goes to people who essentially don't work or have very minimal employment and are obviously not professionals. So they're living in the same apartments as you are. They are getting money from the government for their children, and you're not. They're having the school paid for them. They're having the activities they do on the weekend paid for them. And they get to have all day just using the facilities like the pool while you work. And then on the off chance that you go out to dinner at some place like Olive Garden, like the cheapest of the cheap sit-down restaurants, it will be flooded with these same people who would be very low-income people ordinarily. And immediately, this refrain starts playing in your brain. Am I the biggest sucker in the entire... why? Why am I doing this? What is the point? It's the same thing that was going through people's brains during the Somali fraud scandal. These people just live on the government dole. Their entire community lives on the government dole. All they do is take care of themselves and receive a check. And here you are struggling against a competitive market to pull things. And the people who are beneath you in the economic order of things are going first. They're getting more luxury. And of course, you all know that they have side income that's off the books. They work just enough not to qualify to get off of benefits. So all of that money goes to consumption. And half that consumption they're not even paying. If it's like the Monterey Aquarium. The demoralization implicit in this is just not something that the boomer mind can comprehend. The boomer mind cannot comprehend the K-shaped economy. They can't comprehend the K-shaped economy. It's out of the question for them. It's your fault that people who are poorer than you and people who are richer than you are consuming everything, and you're left with the work and the taxes and the grind. That's your fault. What, you fucking ate at a restaurant? Don't you know that goes into your 401k, bucko? It's compounding interest. I'm surprised you don't know that. I'm surprised you don't know about compounding interest. The problem with all of this is an issue that my friend John Carter brought up. He said, what happens when the experimenter fails the marshmallow test? This essay just came out a few hours ago. John Carter, the Substacker, I love you. Great read, by the way. Everyone support him. Friend of the channel. He says, what the boomers don't understand is they're giving people lectures about marshmallow tests. And indeed, the marshmallow test is an accurate test. I don't know if I really need to reiterate what the marshmallow test is. We are natives of the internet. We know what it is. But in case you don't, the experimenter is testing kids on their time preference. And he gives each kid a marshmallow and says, if you don't eat it, then in an hour, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. And the kids that don't eat it have low time preference, and the kids that do eat it have high time preference. And the kids that don't eat the marshmallow tend to do better in life because high time preference people are able to make long-term investments. But what the boomer doesn't understand is that the experiment of the marshmallow test can be used to break people's time preferences. Most people have been raised in an environment that is low time preference. Going to college is low time preference. But what if college suddenly doesn't start? What if college suddenly stops paying? Interacting with the mating market and the dating market, the way it works, is low time preference. Not being a complete slut is low time preference. But all of these things rely on the fact that there is some deliverable that comes later on that is better than what the people get when they cheat or take the high time preference way out. So what, John Carter said, would happen if you ran the marshmallow experiment on kids, except for the kids who waited, you snatched away the large marshmallow and this gave them 2 tiny marshmallows that were hardly the size of the original one. So by waiting, they get punished. What would happen then? We all have implicit time preferences. But if you kept on running this experiment again and again and again and again, pretty soon you'd have no low time preference kids. And that's exactly the experiment we've been running on the younger millennials and the Zoomers. I'm using my bird hands now. You know that I mean this. This is what home math hates. But I'm using bird hands. I have to use bird hands on boomers. You got to listen to me. I'm angry, man. It's infuriating because people do not see this. They do not see the way out of the crisis we're in, and they keep on playing these dumb games. When we train people to be low time preference, what do girl dollars versus boy dollars even look like? Well, women don't want to settle down. That's becoming increasingly apparent. There's a study that came out just this week, and it confirmed something that we've known for ages. They've done experiments about this in multiple countries, and it's good to know that they've repeated it, and that this is a repeatable experiment. But it's a good demonstration of what girl dollars versus boy dollars are for. You look at, drum roll please, young lottery winners. Doesn't have to be a very large lottery, but suddenly some person between the age of 25 and 40 suddenly gets a large amount of money that they never thought they'd have before for some reason, some huge injection of cash. What does this do to their plans on having families? Well, as it turns out, and is repeatable now, if If it hadn't already been repeated, I think this is a very widely repeated result. When young men get a huge injection of cash, they use it to start families. When girls get a huge injection of cash, they use it to escape families. Boys use money as boy dollars to buy families, to get women to give them the money. Girls use the money for self-care, because that's what girl dollars are for. Girl dollars are for self-care. Girl leisure time is for self-care. Once you've finished your responsibilities, the rest of your money is for self-care when you're a woman. And so if you get $1 million that's not very much money these days, but $10 million from a small lottery these days, that's your vacation to Bali. That's your vacation to Africa. That's you seeing the snows of Kilimanjaro, or at least staying in the hotel and getting the tour. That's what it's for. For boys, that's your house, that's your family. That's your ticket to boomerdom, to not put too fine of a point on it. Girl dollars are different than boy dollars. And of course, the liberals, the boomers in particular, they swoop in on this and take exactly the wrong lesson. Oh my God, guys, look. When women have the free choice behind a veil of ignorance, Rawls, this man Rawls, the eternal boomer philosopher. Let's phrase everything as a completely free choice. Let's evaluate all ethics in that regard. That makes sense, doesn't it? It makes absolutely no sense to do this, but we're doing it anyway. When women have all the money in the world, their free choice, aka their authentic choice, is to not have families. Therefore, we've just proven feminism right. Families oppress women because they take them away from their perfect, no friction stream that they were able to make with no resource constraint whatsoever. We've proven families are oppressive to women and not to men because men choose it. Yeah. But we know from decades of statistics that women are happier when they have families. This is also a repeatable and observed result. Plus, the other little inconvenient fact that we get from this analysis quite clearly is if people don't have families, the species dies. The species dies. So either our statistics are wrong and we should just condemn our species to oblivion, or alternatively, women don't necessarily make the right choice when they make the most free choice. I know this is impossible to believe, but the right choice and the most free choice are not always the same choice. The Rawlsians might disagree. And again, even the Rawlsians, it's so ridiculously stupid. They imagine rights and privileges being distributed behind a veil of ignorance, but they'll never talk about distributing responsibilities behind a veil of ignorance. Otherwise, you just retroactively justify imperialism. But what can we say? Girl dollars do not purchase families. And that's all that's apparent. And not only that, girls themselves are attracted to a certain kind. This brings us full circle. This brings us back full circle because these girls who are using their money on self-care, they're not asexual beings. They're not just people who consume vacations and dollars. They also want to believe in something. They also want to feel like they have a purpose. They all want to feel like they're sacrificing everything for the world as long as it's comfortable, as long as there's no war. So what do they find? They find the logical conclusion of Mixtape. They, like all of those communist daughters back in the 1920s, rediscover communism in the 2020s as the new brigade of people who are cheering on the revolutionary communists from the sidelines. Now, contrary or in keeping with my disagreement that led to the initial thing that was making me angry, there's a big difference between these communist fangirls and the real people who organize coups and slit people's throats. Again, two sides of the same coin, but sociologically very different, and the distinction needs to be respected. Although, arguably they're part of the same phenomenon. North and South poles are part of the same magnet, and no magnet can be without them. But they are different poles and they operate under opposite rules. But inevitably, what all women find is communism, because communism is the exact way to take their sense of absolute entitlement and project it into their need for universal conquest. That's exactly what communism is. It's the desire to project the entitlement of women onto all people, regardless of whether it kills them or not. All people are entitled to be what I think I should be. We need absolute freedom and absolute consumption, and if you disagree, to the gulags. And the thing is that this is a game. This is a game because deep down the communist daughters know that communism is bullshit. They know that not everyone can live like them. They know that there has to be rules. They know that there are villains. But they like it because it gives them a purpose. It gives them a good and a bad, a right and a wrong. And moreover, it gives them their absolute human need to see revolutionary violence visited upon their enemies, which they desire above everything else. They're bloodthirsty despite their universal pacifism. They're social Darwinists despite their egalitarian sensibilities. They're warlike despite the fact that they constantly sing about peace, and nothing gets them revved up like this. So right now, you'll see our own crop of communist daughters crowing outside the courthouse next to Luigi Mangioni's trial, going on and on and on about how Brian Thompson deserved to die. I don't give a flying fuck, he died. Says a woman wearing a press badge. Is there no shame? And then two flunkies. They're better off without him. His children are better off without him. They're better off that he's dead. They should enjoy the blood money. They should pull up their bootstraps. And you know what I saw when they should be grateful for their blood money. They should be grateful for a dead father. I don't see a communist. I see a fucking boomer. Because boomer and communism and female politics are all part of the same organic process. The communist daughters are created by the boomer fathers. The communist daughters punish virtue and reward vice. The vice creates sociopaths. The sociopaths destroy order. The destroyed order leads to more liquid capital being poured upon the communist daughters. And chaos grows. It's a machine for manufacturing sociopaths. And look, it's not like you can't find people who are legitimately the prefiguration of the actual sociopaths. It's not all just Emma Rosenbergs and Simone Veils and then various other women who have, some kind of weird type of sexual fascination with revolutionary violence, projecting their own goon fantasies onto a justice system and a father who left behind two orphan boys. You can see the sociopaths growing right out from under us, and it's only going to get worse. You had this, everyone's favorite, I don't even remember this guy's name. I remember this guy's name. 2 videos in succession. First one, I'm sterilizing myself to fight white supremacy. And not only that, every time I see a white person who's pregnant or is having children, I know that they are the class enemy. And they are inflicting harm upon us. They're actively inflicting harm upon us. I mean, he's laying down the groundwork for the justification of murdering parents, maybe murdering children. That's a logical extension of every single white person born in America, according to this guy, this boomer historian. I can't pronounce his name, but this clip's been around. But according to him, every single white child that's born is a genetic oppressor, born to create carbon and to oppress minorities. And look, I've heard that one before. But in case that kind of vague aspersion of people's literal births causing harm to people in the present era, in case that was too vague for you, the next video circulating around from this rat has him speculating that if he was in America at any time, he'd make it his mission to exterminate every man, woman, and child from the North American continent. And of course, it's the typical outrage. It is kind of rage bait. I'm not going to lie about that. But this is what's coming. This is the other pole of the communist magnet. You've got the communist daughters on one hand, and you've got the communist sociopaths on the other. And I'm not the first person to notice this, not by a long shot. C.S. Lewis noticed this about communist parties. George Orwell noticed about communist parties. Jonathan Bowden, much, much later, noticed this about communist parties. It's the cattiest, most feminine, privileged bankers' daughters, and then sitting right next to them is the seething criminal underclass that is just waiting for an opportunity to take vengeance. And these two poles operate like they can't quite see each other. Like they're moving around in the same political movement in the same space, but they can't interact with each other. It'd be kind of be cathartic if a communist daughter could marry a sociopathic husband. But they don't generally do that. I mean, I guess it happened to Lindy West a little bit, right? But most of the time, the two cores never meet. They are very much like the north and south poles of a magnet. Part of the same object, but always diametrically opposed. You can't quite force them together, yet they move irreversibly in the same direction. And it comes from the boomer bucks going to the communist daughters. Communism is a managerial madhouse. It is the end of the managerial form, at least as long as humanity persists. It's fueled by boomer bucks, funneled to women orderlies, and plagued by nihilistic demons that prey on everybody else. And they're all working to keep the system going. They're all working to make sure that this madness lasts a little bit longer, that we can just a little bit more quality out of the system, because everyone knows that the system is fake and the rules don't matter and no one believes in anything. And this is the easiest process to undertake, is the constant tread downward, to feed the worst actors and to reward, to punish the good and to reward the evil. This is what I hate about the boomers online, and I wish I could communicate to them. I don't know how I can communicate this to them. Let's say that you are a Dave Ramsey. Let's say you are one of these people who wants to make sure that that millennials internalize the right lesson. What you do to teach the right lesson is you get people to make small sacrifices and then you immediately reward them. Small sacrifice, small reward. Then you go for a slightly larger sacrifice and a larger reward. You build it up like that. You don't just yell at people Why aren't you making the biggest sacrifice you possibly could of your entire 20s for a hypothetical future that might not even exist? Do it. Just do it. Just do it. Just yell at people. You don't exercise their muscles. You don't train them to do this kind of thing. You just stand at people who've been totally untrained and miseducated their entire lives, and you yell at them about why they are not Olympic athletes. If anything, you are untraining them. You are making even the prospect of showing up for this lecture to be a bad deal for the people who should be your students. What you do is you sympathize with them, you admit the situation, and then you propose what small sacrifices could be made to get immediate, not necessarily immediate, but to get small rewards in the near term, let's say. Start with small jumps. Start with small commitments. See how you can trust somebody, and then they'll reward your trust. And by trusting people and rewarding trusts, the entropy moves backwards. You can get people in the position where they might actually consider foregoing lunches to invest in a Roth IRA. They might actually do that. But you have to train them. And that's the one thing that the boomers will never do. The boomers will never train young men. They will always spoil young women, and they'll never train young men. And hey, maybe I could try to train young women, but who am I kidding? Girl dollars are not for training. Girl dollars are for self-care. Boy dollars are for training. So we need to start there. Anti-communism is just the alliance of the sane. I guess this is what's kind of bringing me back to the thing that's got me really angry this time. And I don't know what to say. Twitter's a madhouse now. It used to be that Twitter was for dialectics, so that the dialectics could come off of Twitter and go to YouTube. But no one does that anymore. All they do is just use X to drive X traffic and then make drama videos about it. I always emphasize this, but if we're going to survive this, we're going to survive this in alliance with. It's not going to be ideological. It is kind of, because this is a war of belief, and the thing that will save us ultimately is a belief in a higher power. This is something that I kind of neglected to say, right? While it's totally improper for men to expect heroic sacrifices from us without properly training us to make those sacrifices, it is very proper, or proper is not the right word. It is very natural for God to ask us to make extraordinary sacrifices. And indeed, God does give us challenges in the form of extraordinary sacrifices that we never thought we'd have to make. So in some sense, the renewal will be ideological insofar as that it will be composed of people who understand what God's justice feels like. But at the beginning, it will be very vague. It will be comprised of people who understand the value of trust more than anything else. They'll understand that trust is a currency and clout is meaningless. Eternal September. It's a I know, it's a Yarvinism. It's a mole bugism. So soon may I have to go back to my roots. Eternal September is the period, at least in the early 90s and late 80s, when all the university colleges would get their students online and there would be a flood of newbies into the internet space, using it for the first time. The reason why we keep on talking about Eternal September is because Academic spaces and spaces that are highly curated to a single interest are high trust areas. And during September, they're overtaken by newbies who just want to use the space to get as much value as possible and then discard it. So you go from, there was some person made a graph, it didn't fit onto the slide very well, so I skipped it. So a September is a trip from turning something that looks like a monastery into something that looks like Disneyland, into something that looks like Disneyland if everyone stopped cleaning up trash and fixing the rides, aka a dump. That is what Eternal September means. And the only way you can defeat it is by fostering the bonds of trust. And this is what pisses me off about this whole thing. Eternal September can only be persisted through trust. Civilizational winter can only be persisted through trust. Which is why I find it infuriating when people lie about me, specifically to indict my credibility and call me a liar. I cannot stand this, and I never forget it. I don't think people realize this. They think that one insult is just as good as another. If I call a Dave a liar, it's just as bad as if I call him bald. Or point out his gay way of talking. Yeah, brilliant. I've had this lisp since I was in 4th grade. You know, congratulations. And you've correctly identified a speaking impediment and a California accent. I'm sure this is devastating. I don't fucking care. But I care about the accusation of lying when it's brought against me, and I don't forget it. Because that destroys the most foundational element of everything that I'm building or trying to help people build on this channel and anywhere outside this channel. The idea that we trust each other, to be sincere and believe what we say and stick to our principles and commit to that. Boomers don't really understand this. People who are occupying the space of privilege don't understand this. They think that this is all game. But it's not a game. It's not a game what we're doing here. I mean, if it's a game, then it's a game that's destroyed the entire world that we knew in the 1990s. The entire world that we knew that's depicted in Mixtape was defeated by this game that we see as the transition of information through the internet. But what is the point if that information can't be trusted? If you think that it's given to you by people who don't have your interests at heart? If you have to deal with people who will literally look you in the eye and lie to you, or look straight at a counterexample of what they accuse you, and that word doesn't say what you mean, what you said it said. I'm looking straight at the thing you linked me, and I'm denying it existed. I like to be very hesitant when I call people liars because I know how much I hate it, as is obvious. I know how it is. You get embarrassed when you're wrong, and then you pretend like you don't see the thing that disproves you. Like, oh, I didn't see that. I don't see the thing that you've linked me. It doesn't exist. I can't read. I'm illiterate. I can't hear. I can't speak on this topic when I've been proven wrong. You know, the 3 monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. I understand how it is. You're embarrassed. I don't fucking give a shit. There has to be an understanding that when you make an accusation and you're wrong about it, you retract the accusation if it's something that has to do with the core trust people hold in between them. That is a critical dimension to a conversation. Otherwise, what am I doing talking to you about anything else? You say, Dave, you're a liar and you frequently lie about everything. Now come debate me about communism. No, fuck you. By engaging you in a debate and not immediately addressing the fact that you accused me of being a habitual liar, I will validate your accusation against me. And this isn't an accusation like being bald or having a lisp or whatever you're or being wrong or being stupid. I don't care. This is an accusation that goes to the heart of everything that we're attempting to do and undermines everything that who cares about what the definition of communism is, or what Marx said, or what the right economic system is, what the right theology. Who cares about what's right about any of that if you can't trust anybody on the things that are happening in our community, in the conversations that were happening? If I can have minimal trust in you to be honest about what you're saying, at least as it pertains to how we evaluate and describe each other's characters, there is zero point in talking. There is no discourse that is possibly interesting to me. That's the reality of what we deal with. Trust has to come first. And look, we have to reward good behavior. We have to be loyal to the people who've been good friends to us. But we also have to punish bad behavior. Loyalty with reward, treachery with vengeance. I can't deal with situations like that. And, no one really should have to. It's not something that like a mature internet does. And increasingly, we're going to kind of be segmented off into our own little spaces that are surrounded by people we trust. And it's tragic because some people still haven't gotten through their heads that the internet as we knew it is over. There's like the internet, and that is the deep internet. Look, how it worked before. The internet was there, and you pretty much assumed that everything that didn't come from Wikipedia, or Wikipedia didn't exist in the 90s, everything that did not come from like Britannica or an established news source was a lie. Everything on the internet is a lie. That's how it used to be. Then the social media age happened, and we had a reasonable expectation that if we knew who the person was in their online pseudonym, that you'd have a reputation that you needed to maintain. And you would need to be embarrassed if you did something that was really wrong, or at least apologize for it. Now in the death of discourse, that's going away again. The deep internet is at this stage all lies. Now, there's more than just the deep internet. The deep internet's full of AIs and malevolent bots and people who are just scamming you from India. But there's also a proximate intranet, the people that you've had conversations with in real life, the people who you do podcasts with, the people who you have business relationships with. As the internet gets more deceptive and less trustworthy, you need to be able to trust the people who are in your inner circle more. Because it's you against the world, as the Germans say. I guess the Arabs say that too. But it's 5 against the world, or 4 against the world, as the Germans say. It's our group against the world. And so you have to trust them more. You have to take the ethics of real life to the people who are close to you on the internet, to the content creators that you trust, even if only parasocially, to the people who you run conferences with. I mean, like, is this not our livelihood? That's not my livelihood. I have a day job. Maybe it's other people's livelihoods. But we've staken money. We have our reputations. People get fired. People get fired all the time for this stuff. Are we not taking enough risk? Are the ideas that we're talking here not what's going to govern our future? And we're going to fucking lie to people inside our own group to fuel the algorithm that is almost entirely comprised of bots and scammers so we can have a drama cycle? Are you fucking kidding me? Politics is what you can't leave behind. And the team you fight political battles with are the group of people you trust. And they might be united with you in religious perspective. Hopefully, eventually they will be. And eventually the sides will coalesce so that the divisions will largely be religious in nature. But for the time being, it's just who you can trust. And everything else is going to be devoured by the boomers and their communist daughters and the pets, the demons that they summon from the collapse of what once was a civilization. Civilization is only trust. Civilization is only trust. And sometimes to maintain that trust, you have to swallow your pride. Look, if I get caught saying something false by accident, I will apologize. If I am tempted to lie, and I have, everyone's tempted to do things. I don't think I've intentionally lied about anything in a long time. But if I will confess to that, and I will be deeply grieved. But it's better to just confess you're wrong, make a clean break, and then begin again on a level of trust, and go from there. That's the only course there is to move forward. Anyway, guys, that's the end of the podcast lecture portion. And we will do super chats now. This is exactly 2 hours on the dot. Very nice, that. I'm so sorry that I do not have super chats able to pop up on the screen. It just would not work. Ugh. That is a blare on, that made me look very backlit having it on that screen. Okay, let's see if we can't do super chats. Give me a second, guys, while I set this up. See, ordinarily I used to have Entropy is sadly, I think that's finalized now. I think Entropy is sadly out of business. It's very sad, but unfortunately, I saw this coming for a while now. It's terrible. I would really like someone else to use for super chats other than Google, even though, let's be honest, people are much more generous on Google than they are on any other platform. Okay, let's do this. Okay. Tough for $10. Going back to you mentioning Chris Williamson discussing the problem 3 years ago. Going back to you mentioning Chris Williamson discussing the problem 3 years ago, after the reactionary right from your last episode, did you see his recent panel episode on declining birth rates? Oh, yes, I actually did. So Chris Williamson did a panel on declining birth rates, and he had on, I forget, he had two academics. One was religious, one was secular, and one was, what was it? The Collins woman, that Silicon Valley, let's have as many babies as possible woman. And the conversation was going really, really well. I mean, it was the standard stuff about birth rates. And then suddenly they get the topic of using AI to kind of placate incels. And the Collins woman sits up and she starts cackling about how her main goal is to create AI virtual realities to placate all the substandard men so that they can be euthanized. And she starts shouting, "I love MAID. We need MAID everywhere. We need to get rid of all the people who aren't fit to," and it's just like, it's this insane sociopathic rant this woman goes on. And I'm just thinking, you are the most disconnected. I mean, I don't think this woman's actually a sociopath, but this woman is deeply, deeply morally disconnected. And I felt I couldn't get past that part of the stream. I've criticized the Collins in the past, and like I said, I've invited them onto the stream, and they sent me this weird email that felt like an AI composed it. And then when I replied back in bafflement, I never got a reply back, so that was the end of that. I think they're on to bigger and better things than talking to YouTubers like myself. They probably know the criticism on my end. And I just don't know what to make of this of this woman who thinks that the people who are suffering and just deserve to be put into a Skinner box for the rest of their life and euthanized. That's cruel to me. I'm not saying like I couldn't imagine a world where euthanasia was used to get rid of like particularly people who are suffering needlessly, but human beings need a certain amount of dignity. I mean, it's better to send them to a monastery. If there is something that prohibited most men from having children, send them to a monastery. Give them a life where they can have dignity helping out their fellow man. Uh, how would she like it if her children were stuck in Skinner boxes and euthanized for being useless? I can't believe anyone would have that level of sociopathy. It's not even like I'm Catholic and I'm against euthanasia. Like I said, I could imagine taking my Catholic hat off now that you could use euthanasia to accomplish, a societal need, but just so callously going after human life like that. I really can't stand the Collins. I can't stand how cavalier and dismissive they are about these serious issues, and how they disregard real spiritual concerns, and how they speak in LinkedIn corporate speak. I find it really insufferable, and I don't find that they make any meaningful contributions. All they do is say what all the other pronatalists say, and then they mix that with like this Silicon Valley sociopathic, anti-human, anti-life perspective that is just stomach turning. I'm not trying to be like moralistic and pearl clutchy. I'm saying that when I see them do this, I literally feel disgusted. I don't feel angry like people lying about me. I feel physically disgusted. All right, well let's go. Let's go on here, and where am I? Okay. Here is super chat from Toph again for $20. Thank you very much. Thinking about the fertility episode, I'm tired of hearing people only restate the problem. Yeah, you and me both. I need to make this a bit larger. I'm tired of hearing people only restate the problem or offer vague top-down fixes. As a single Catholic man in this city, what can I concretely do to help my community become more fertile? Help young men. Fertility begins with having confident and economically situated young men. Now, look, that sounds a little bit boomer. We also need to teach women to be virtuous and to not play this travel. Don't do the Alex Cooper plan. Try to get women off the Alex Cooper plan. But the problem is you've got a number of rich boomers who are paying women to take the Alex Cooper plan. They're paying them money to live this lifestyle. And it's very hard to teach them that when powerful people are pulling in the exact opposite direction. It's just a reality, and boomers will do anything not to see this fact. The where was I? It's funny. Was this guy Med Gold? He's like one of these BAP people. He when we're having a conversation about women and doing OnlyFans and stuff like this, he says there's far too much pressure on women to not make pornography. Where is all the pressure on young men not to consume it as simps? And I felt I couldn't grab him and yell him at this, but the very obvious reality in the OnlyFans economy, and I only recently realized this, OnlyFans is not being largely driven by addicted Zoomers. They don't have enough disposable income to drive that economy. Now, Zoomers are Coomers. They are addicted to porn, but usually it's to the cheap forms of porn. The people who are really driving the OnlyFans economy are rich, old, perverted boomers. They are the pay pigs that keep these professional OnlyFans girls afloat. They are the whales who are driving this. So once more, I want to lecture digital Johns and get them to shape up. But unfortunately, I know that the real culprits behind this are the rich. There's a lot of Social Security money that's going straight into OnlyFans. I can't say I guarantee it, but I highly suspect that that's what's going on. And the numbers don't really add up if that's not what's going on. I can't really put it together. Look, if you want to do what's right for your own Catholic community, start organizing young men. So Knights of Columbus is a little bit boomer, but they do good work. That's a place to start. If you have a good parish youth group, I don't really know. Married men can very rarely participate in it, but they can kind of support some of the activities, and that's always good. Probably Knights of Columbus in your parish is the place to start. you know, although the leadership is sometimes very old, that can be an opportunity. Now, if you want to go the other route and take people who are based in your area, well, that's kind of what I like promoting the most. You can meet people who have our ideas in the basket weaving circles, and through the fraternal society that is the Old Glory Club, or your state's version of the Old Glory Club, through the various different organizations like Exit and New Founding and stuff like that. I work with these people. They're very good people. They're really base people who work in all of these groups. If you find people in your area that have your own ideological preconceptions, design your life around that and be a nucleus for something to start up in the future. That's the best thing you can do in the moment. Absolutely, hands down. TX Apollodorus says, "Hey Dave, longtime listener of the show, first time super chatting. I loved your Lenten culture series, but was really hoping for an architecture episode. Perhaps thoughts on new classical buildings?" Well, I think new classical buildings are, they are, they're definitely an improvement on brutalism, right? So when I think of new classical buildings, I think of like what Russia does and some of its new buildings. Another good example of that is like the Church of the Holy Family in Spain. It's this new cathedral, like this massive, massive cathedral. It's in Barcelona, I think. Don't quote me on that. Maybe it's in Madrid. I wouldn't know. But it's this Spanish cathedral. They started building it, and it's been a very, very long time coming. But it's designed to look like this giant Gothic cathedral, but it's obviously a modern construction. My one criticism of this is that these buildings all kind of look still a little bit postmodernist. They don't have an idea that they're pursuing. They don't have like their own ethos or their own moral language that they speak in. All they're saying is, we're just not modernism. We're just not postmodernism. And that's not enough. When I see these new buildings, I'm like, oh, okay, so we're over postmodernism now. We're over modernism. But that we don't have anything to say. What does this building say about the people, their relationship to the cosmos, what they're being brought into? I mean, and I don't know, the problem is that the modern state doesn't really have a religious message for most people. It does not have a motivating aesthetic that isn't in some ways tainted by the old progressive one. And the old progressive one doesn't want to make buildings. There's no progressive vision of the brave human future. And therefore, it's sort of immaterial for the larger purpose of creating art, which is a little bit tragic. I will thank you very much for your super chat. Paul A, did you kiss your wife before you married her? Good God, I do not like discussing this. We followed like the very vague Chase guidelines for dating while we were dating. Look, like there were a few times where you kind of drag over the line a little bit with this stuff, but we definitely kissed. We probably dragged over the line a few times on even the John Paul II Chase dating guidelines. But I think we preserve the spirit of the law just fine. I mean, insofar as young people can in this day and age. The problem with this the problem with this this whole you can't kiss people before a marriage is I mean, it's insane. I mean, what can I say about this? I lost my train of thought here. There's not much to say about it other than it's insane. Okay, like guys, like let's take a step back here. You cannot just import pre-modernity into postmodernity. You can't just do this. So if your plan is no kissing before marriage, but you get married at 21 to a girl that's pre-approved by your family, that kind of works. If it's no sex before marriage and your plan is we're going to get married when I'm 25, 26, 27, and no sex before marriage just means being celibate between the ages of 18 and 23-ish, or 22-ish for women. That is a little bit of a stretch for hormonal young people, but kind of doable. You stretch it into 28 and it becomes Herculean. You stretch it into 35 and almost nobody can do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, by all means, date chastely, but the expectations, this is a problem that I have, is that a lot of young Zoomers, they're like 25, 23, 24, 25, can't get a date, and they're like, oh, all is done for me. And what I want to say is, hey, I didn't have a lot of luck in dating until I was in like 25, 26. So this is, you're nothing new is under the sun. But then I forget that, there were periods in my life where I was just being kind of massively incelibate, to put it lightly, with other people in other ways. I don't want to really get into this. You put me on the spot. You can tell that I'm blushing. It's not the same if you're a celibate Catholic man who's following the rules in your early 20s. This is a very hard thing to put up. Our modern system doesn't deal with this properly. So what I like to say is that I hold the Catholic rules absolutely, but lightly. Absolutely follow the Catholic rules, but we need to have a large amount of forgiveness for people who, in good faith, fall off the wagon here and there. There just has to be this understanding that we've screwed up the macrocosmic system so much that we have to have more leeway. And this whole idea of no kissing, how could that be possible in a 2-year engagement? And what does it even accomplish? Kissing is a public activity. The only things that should be prohibited are things that people do in private. That's the only way it makes sense. People have to be public couples to make the courtship process work in the modern era. The only way no kissing works is if it's an arranged marriage. This is just insane. It's just insane, this no kissing thing. I don't know. Someone's recommending that I use AI to read chats. Maybe for next time, that's a good idea. I have Natural Reader, so it's a very good idea. Okay, Mana Yud Shu Shai says, hey Dave, I've been a fan since your first talk with Carl Benjamin all those years back. Thanks for helping me out with liberalism. My pleasure. I'm glad to help. You're one of the few positive influences on my life. God bless. Well, I hope I'm not one of the few. I'm sorry to hear that. Look, whatever I can do to help, that's always my goal. And, by all means, try to meet people in real life. That is the only way that we can build bonds that will get us past this position in time and in the world. And look, I have faith that we're going to get through this time. It is very, very difficult. The internet being what it is just infuriating. All of the worst elements in humanity, not even in humanity, it's like you see the good in people. You see what they do well. Like, they're great content creators. They make a damn funny video. And then they just completely make it impossible for you to interact with them in a way that does not make you look like the biggest cock. I don't know what the fuck to do with that. And thank you very much. Darth Calhoun says, hey Dave, at work, but I'll watch later. Well, thank you very much, Darth Calhoun. I appreciate the super chat. Michael Hadley says, trying to work today. The burden seems heavy. This helps lighten the load. Dave, you're the best. Well, thank you. I hope the angry storytelling session helps some people. I feel that kind of gets the energy to the highest levels. I don't know that makes the subject matter particularly interesting. In some sense, it doesn't. I mean, I complained about boomers and women and the interaction that creates communism from the entropy that's generated. Michael Hadley says, light in the road. Thank you very much, Michael Hadley. Hunger the Dye Merchant. Hello, hello, hello. One of my fellows, person I know from many years. He says, evening, Dave. No questions this week. Just wishing your family well. God bless. Well, thank you very much, Hunger. I really appreciate it. Charlie for $19, 1999 says, watching since 2016. Longtime listener, first time super chatter. Young millennial, Wife and I just had our third child. Congratulations. Well, I should be super chatting you. Well, thank you so much. But I have that strange internalized adult imposter syndrome common to my generation. Any remedy for this? Um, I know what you mean about adult imposter syndrome. I mean, look, if there's a psychological benefit to the boomers, uh, it's this. Whatever adulting you're doing as a millennial father is way more than what the boomers are doing right now when they should know better. The boomers, they worked very hard at their professional lives. They were very, very low time preference, but they kind of slid into adulthood. It just kind of was there for them and they slouched right into it. That's not the same for you. You made a choice to be here. And if you're statistically normal, you spend way more time with your family than your father or grandfather did. So how can you be an imposter in that situation? You can't be more of an imposter than like Dave Ramsey or whatever. You can't be more of an imposter than Noah Smith. You can't be more of an imposter than Richard Hanania. Like, those people are imposters. And you're the only I just feel this very distinctly at this stage. We're the only people who are really trying to carry the torch a little bit and preserve something of the spirituality of the old world. The progressives don't know it, but everything that they click with when it comes to rock and roll music, when it comes to the vitality of the 90s and the 80s, the places in the world that they want to live through, we're the people who are carrying that tradition forward. All millennials either follow the aesthetic that has them become eternal children or that has them forge a world for future children. And it doesn't always map exactly on to the decision to have children, but it maps on very directly with the political dedication to leaving something behind for the next generation. And I think that corresponds very much to the right and left wing at this stage in history. So I wouldn't feel like an imposter if I were you. Certainly not after you're a third child. But congratulations again. Link for $50. Thank you so much. Very generous. What do you make of the Fuentes contention that it's not primarily Israel, but the international and cosmopolitan gnomish nation of which Israel is only a junior party, e.g. New York gnomery, that is the primary problem for right-wing party politics? I mean, he's right. Look, guys. I didn't mention the Jewish question. That was obvious. The fourth missing pillar of societal decline that I didn't mention at the beginning. What oftentimes people who are really lost in the sauce of the Jewish question don't realize is that the Jewish community is not one thing. I mean, it has a lot of perverse actors and perverse interests inside of it, and it acts collectively in a very perverse way relative to us. But it is not one thing. It is not a hive mind. And the people who are, there is overlap. Like, I don't doubt. Like, Jonathan Greenblatt is absolutely somebody who seeks like genocide for everybody except for his own people. And there's no way he couldn't be conscious of that conflict. But for most other people, their problems that are just oblivious. They're like women with like the unattractive men. Jews treat Gentiles like women treat men who they're not attracted to. Like they're not even people. They're beneath the ghost line, right? they're not. It's not that they hate us. It's not that they don't even not like us. They're not conscious of us as people who think about their collective the way they think about their collective, and because of that, they're mostly callous, and so these gnomes you speak of, the real enemy is not Israel. Israel's callousness is born out of ethnocentrism and ethno-narcissism and obliviousness to how other people perceive them. The real bad actors are the people who are in the banking and international community. A lot of them share an ethnicity with the state of Israel. A lot of them um, cross pollinate politically. But it's mainly the people in the international community and in the banking system that are the enemy. I think Israel is kind of a red herring in that regard, although Zionist influences are still very perverse relative to us, even if they come from a sincere love of their own people. Their relationship to our government is very perverse. I don't know a better word than that. It's in the wrong place. It is hurting both of us, but us mostly. So thank you very much, Link. Very generous. The Wooster for $4.99. Unironic question: did Neutral Milk Hotel invent millennials? I mean, it kind of did. I love that question. Did Neutral Milk Hotel invent millennials? It certainly invented millennial hipsters. No album invented the other one. I think was like Wilco, especially the album Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. Which was, it's a pretty good album, and kind of it was up there with Neutral Milk Hotel's Airplane Over the Sea as kind of the quintessential hipster album, insofar as these bands got like appreciated by Rolling Stones and were listened to by people, you know, in the mainstream and not just like Pitchfork subscribers. Yeah, I think it was like Neutral Milk Hotel really did invent the millennial hipster. And you could map millennial hipsterdom musically as something that started with Neutral Milk Hotel and really ended with Mumford and Sons. That was their trajectory. So that was like what, 1998 to 1998, I think, was when Airplane Over the Sea came out. 1998 to 2012. That was really the high watermark of millennial hipsterdom. And then after 2012, that's when the split happened politically and the Great Awakening occurred. And then, hipsterdom doesn't really make sense under conditions of the Great Awakening. It doesn't translate politically into the language of the Great Awakening very well. And that's why, you don't have people talk about neutral milk. I mean, like the people who, even the people like Michael Burns, which was like the original, I had a tweet about him, and he's like a quintessential millennial leftist. He doesn't talk. I mean, he's exactly the kind of person that would talk about Neutral Milk Hotel in 1998, but he doesn't talk about it in like 2026. Like nobody does. Like it's passe. Neutral Milk Hotel is about. I mean, do I want to describe this? It's a record about growing up in an abusive / incestuous house in like Louisiana in the early 90s. Like it's horrible, right? It's horrific. But it's sung in this like sing-songy kind of way that makes everything kind of a joke and subversive and cutesy, and it's really bizarre for that reason. So that is Neutral Milk Hotel. I have no idea what the title of that band comes from. It's strange. Isaac Young for $10 says the fascinating thing about Mixtape is that daddy, this is just a warning scene. Well, I mean, that's critical, right? That is the ultimate communist daughter scene, is it not? I couldn't find a good picture of that for the communist daughter slide, but zero. So I'll finish the tweet. Zero self-awareness, says Isaac Young. I screamed laughing. I am constantly in the frame of my audience. Progs speak otherwise. Yeah, exactly. Right. So to set the frame for people who don't know the video game, Mixtape has this girl, and I only know because people are talking about it. Like she has like some kind of like abusive, religiously conservative father, like the perfect 1990s dad you can get angry about. And she says she like fake sets a fire. She fake sets a fire. And so she's starting to burn down the entire town. And like, her father obviously is an authority figure, is like this cop. And he pulls up, and then she has the matches out again to start another blaze. And she says, this fire you have right now, it's not terrorism. This is a warning. This is only a prefiguration of the wickedness you will see if you do not let me be free. And every time she says a syllable, like slam poetry, the guitar goes and like zooms in on her, like slam poetry style. This does not pass the smell test, guys. I mean, first of all, slam poetry wasn't even really a thing in the 90s. That wasn't the vibe. It was more a thing in the hipster scenes in the early 2010s. So it's just so anachronistic and it's so narcissistic. I'm going to burn down the town because I don't like the fact that you're sending me to a private school. And just it's that. And we learn. Can't believe I didn't put this in the main lecture section. We learned that one of the chief causes of the Palisade fire was this arsonist that was like a copier of Luigi Mangione. He started a fire that killed David Lynch, that killed like 20 something people, destroyed millions and millions, maybe billions of dollars in property. In one of the most scenic areas of California, it covered the state, half the state in like ash for a day or two. It was insane. And he did this to make a fucking statement about being free and about political theory. Like he did this to make a statement about theory. That's where we are. That's where we are. Is we're doing political theory, arsony that kills tens of people and makes thousands of people homeless and destroys half of an entire slum. Half is generous. It's LA. Does LA even have a half? Is what I want to know. Is it possible to destroy half of LA? I feel like it's like talking about half of a river, right? Like if you cut LA in half, like you can divert it, but it's like a flowing sprawl that occupies everywhere between, the what's this? The valley and the and the beginning of San Diego. It's all LA. You can't destroy half of it. Someone's asking, did Lynch die from the fire? Kind of. He was in very, very poor health. And when he had smoke inhalation, he was sent to the hospital with pneumatic, as I understand it. Again, this could be, as I understand it, he was sent to the hospital with smoke inhalation conditions. And you know how this works for old people. When they have smoke inhalation, they develop pneumonia, and that eventually kills them. And to my knowledge, that's what happened with Lynch and the fires. How many years off of his life did it really take, considering how frail he was? I don't know. Probably not that many. It was like the coronavirus. But look, if my not masking killed grandma, then the guy who burned down a significant portion of LA killed David Lynch. I mean, like, I'm tired of this like removed accountability for things that obviously killed people. And 20 something people just burned to death, like straight up. Forget about like extenuating circumstances. So like we're really debating over how many angels can dance on the head of a needle or whatever. Pete Buttigieg for $5. Great name. Boomers, the generation that blew one half of their paycheck on cigarettes and mainstream divorce. Yeah, paragons of financial austerity and discipline. Yeah, every person who knows a boomer, they blew so much of their wealth on divorces and cars. Like boomers lease vehicles. That's pure wasted capital right there. What are you even doing? Anyway, yeah, boomers just can't lecture on this. Pete Budapest again says, I mentioned how I went to the Major League Baseball game last weekend. In the middle of the road, ticket, hot dogs, bottled water were $130 per person. Boomer said people used to listen to the game on the radio and eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Yeah, good. Yeah, this is a perfect example. Sports games, baseball games. Baseball games used to be a standard entertainment practice for middle-class families. Let's go to the game. Let's go to the game. Now, you can't go to the game anymore. You can't go to the game anymore. You can. You can. It will take a huge chunk of your weekly paycheck, way more than you spend on lunches. But that's not a middle class entertainment. That is games are now for fanatical sport. I'm not talking about the playoffs either. I'm talking about season games. That used to be a middle class pastime. It's not anymore. Anyway, PB Brown 0829 says, "Love the show. Happy Memorial Day." Yes, thank you very much. I could use a break. It would be very good. Anyway, oh, my brain. Thank God the house is cooler. Spartan G062, total luxury female communism. Scroll TikTok in the morning, girl boss in the afternoon, make OnlyFans content in the evening, and criticize patriarchy after dinner. I love it. It is the new eudaimonia in the Marxist direction. You spend all day making content so that you can feed smut to boomers, so that you can consume smut marketed to you, fantasizing about living in a society that actually had masculinity as part of its lived reality and not as an element in digital entertainment. You could do all of that and you'd be miserable, as opposed to actually pursuing something that involves sacrifice in life. Brilliant. This is a Marx for the new age. And look, I'm in my OGC speech. I don't know if this conference is open to the public. As a matter of fact, I think it's not. I think it's only open to members at this stage. My OG speech is largely about what we can learn from James Lindsay and apply it to Karl Marx. I'm drawing the line from James Lindsay to Karl Marx to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and relating that to how we should relate to the internet. And so I'm not saying you can't learn anything from Karl Marx. I think Karl Marx is a very fertile thinker as a starting point. He is a very thought-terminating thinker as an end point. It's a very bad place to end up religiously as the end point in your ideological progression. So, take that for what you will. Epiphany a week. Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me. I need to take down your video, but Epiphany a week. I guess I can't advertise your video when you asked me to take it down, but I'll do so after the stream. Says this gives me a $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Charlie Mackey for $25 says, "Good evening. I hope you and yours are well." Thank you very much. $2 for Sneed Chuck. Another pure contribution. Let's reload this. I guess I need to reload the page. We're almost done, I think. Okay, last up for the Psalm. Human Centipede says, for $5, "Hey, can you start the stream over? I didn't realize how important the serious stuff is." Well, that is a joke from a content creator that I am currently not on the best terms with right now. But I very much appreciate the joke. Thank you very much. I will restart the stream imminently. Michael Maxwell for $5 said, "God bless you, Dave. How can we organize? I'm tired of complaining instead of doing. Any ideas on what to do? I have a tech and CS degree." Well, so do I. Look, I don't think that you should organize professionally. The way to play this economy is to be a generalist. Do a little bit of anything and be trustworthy. Stick by your word, be a man of your word, and then see what opportunities come up and leap on them. This is a generalist economy, so always be open to learning new things. I had an opportunity to practice my solder skills when an appliance broke the other day. I hadn't done soldering since at least for 10 years. I used to solder stuff all the time back in college and high school. And I had a chance to do electrical soldering. It was great. Be a generalist professionally. That is how we survive this economy, and keep that in mind. As for organizing, I implore you, first of all, locally, join a church. Do not use that for dating, but if it has a youth group, look into it. It might be an opportunity for that. Join a church. test the waters for some churches are social, some churches are not, but you need to do that. You owe the duty to God regardless of whether it's a good social outlet or not. For your other outlets, join a sport, do an involved hobby, and get really into one hobby so that you know the people who do it and so that you're good at doing it. Get good at 2.5 things. In this day and age, it's probably 5.5 things. 5 things that are kind of professional skills, and then 1/2 a thing is a hobby that you do really, really well. Not good enough to get paid for, or maybe only paid a little bit for, like this, but enough to be known as somebody who does this very competently. People want to have you on their team. People are excited when you show up. You're micro dominant in that sphere. That is very important. And then thirdly and lastly, connect ideologically online with people who are doing things on the ground. I have a list through the Redwood Society. You can see the organizations that I've worked with and that I think are doing good work. Do I know everybody in these organizations intimately? No. Have I had extensive dealings with them? Not really. Some I have had extensive dealings with, and they can vouch for the leaders 100%. But it's a good starting point. If you use the list I have, the green book that's on the Redwood Society, I should have that. I should have had this as part of the low bar, but I'll remember to put that in now. Um, uh, but thank you very much, Michael Maxwell. Jay Athenias says, at a D1 graduation, D1, they used AI voice to read names. They have a guy with a mic correct it 10% of the time. See the trend for booing commencements. Oh my God, really? They're doing graduation and they're having an AI read the kids' names? I would, oh man, booing commencements. Good Lord, I would boo that if I were a parent. You can't even read my kid's name from the roster when you go give him his degree for $30,000. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? Sean, I think people are just like, they're so concerned that they're not going to be on board with AI enough that they use it for things that are useless and that obviously are insulting and stupid. This so they can say that they're on, that they're doing current thing hard enough. USD for $2. Zoomers are addicted to 2D, not 3D, unfortunately. I assume you mean 2D women. I am very glad to say that although I had a weeboo phase, I don't think I was ever remotely tempted by the allures of 2D women. That never was a thing for me. Look, like all guys, I've struggled with, not anymore, but in my early 20s, I struggled with pornography quite a bit, but it was never 2D women. I guess when you're exposed at such an early age, what do they say? A Bronze Age pervert for all his other problems had some great jokes. Is that all the Zoomettes are sitting home lonely because the Zoomer males have gooned themselves into only being attracted to Snorlax, the Pokemon. Look, I mean, that's a dig on Zoomers. That's totally unwarranted, but there is a hint of truth to that. And it is very depressing. Guys, you've got to be very careful with exposure to pornography. It takes a very long time to get over it, if you get over it at all. And so, I understand things are really bad, but we have to kind of keep our eyes on the prize and just see our way through this dark period. Because I feel this entertainment really weakens us, and it's kind of infuriating. Keto for $20 says, the topic of the stream frustrated me as a autistic Zoomer. Most communists have a Y chromosome. Most left-leaning women are generic lib progressive sock dem feminist. Ramsey is an ultra-capitalist. Do you mean progressive? Well, this is the original communist daughter in the Neutral Milk Hotel. I got the sense that the communist daughter in the song was a coon-brained fantasy because of some of the lyrics that are in the song that I can't say because they involve bodily fluids. And So the original reference in the Neutral Milk Hotel song was itself kind of an autistic fantasy. When I say communist daughters, I mean the women who embrace chic radicalism to feel like their lives have purpose and implicitly support the importation or aggrandizing of sociopathic men that want to burn society down. That's what I mean by communist daughters. And my assertion is that most women's politics is just that. Whether they describe themselves as lim or soc dem, ultimately what they're doing is they're consuming money, they're having fully luxury space communism for themselves, while they're paying men to be, sociopathic monsters so they can get their rocks off to fantasizing about their escapades. That is what the communist daughter archetype is in reality, regardless of if they've actually read Marx. Look, guys, if you're autistic, women are, with very rare exceptions, they're never going to be into, uh, like theory. That's not how again, like speaking broadly, that's not how below 90th percentile female minds work. In order to be into theory, you have to be in the top 95th percentile of female masculine brain quality. And that is very rare. So I would not fantasize about a communist daughter, even if you are yourself a Marxist. This is a fake fantasy. But I mean, if you're a Marxist and you're a man in this day and age, what are you doing? I mean, you can like Marx, but like Marx and be a sane person, AKA be part of the right wing. There's lots of good things to like about Marx. There is almost nothing to like about what Marxism is in the present age. Caleb Maupin, I'm sorry, but you can go fuck yourself. I mean, you're a good guy. That was overly aggressive. I kind of take that back. But I mean, seriously, like Caleb Maupin is barking up the wrong tree. This sort of MAGA communist stuff, total LARP. Nobody there is doing anything serious other than driving Zoomer engagement. JPTDM says, referencing the no kissing thing, it's very easy if you just never meet a non-insane woman in real life and have actually truly no opportunity to even fail at that outside of internet images. Referencing the no kissing thing, it's very easy if you've never met a non-insane woman in real life and have no opportunity to ever fall outside of internet images. Yeah, if you're entirely sequestered inside your house and you've never met a flesh and blood woman and never been in a position where you might kiss a flesh and blood woman, then no kissing is very easy to maintain. I wonder how many married men are down with this no kissing before marriage thing. I have never met a married man who is in that position, and certainly not a married man with a son who is getting into his teenage years. It just seems to be insane. I think that's like a meme. Going on, Bugs ABC says, great stream as always. I'm graduating this summer and starting in the application process for veterinary colleges. I was curious if you have any tips or tricks for applying to graduate programs. Oh yeah, of course I do. My tip for okay, so look, there's multiple ways to do it. So if you're right out of college and you're going into graduate programs, look, I mean, ideally you'd have a research relationship with one of your professors, and you can get some good letters of recommendation. That more than your grades is what gets you into, I mean, they'll want us like minimum test scores too. Although maybe in this era of DEI, they de-emphasize that to stop the college from being entirely Asian. But what they're really looking for is the good recommendation letter. If, on the other hand, like me, you've taken a long stint in industry, the best way you can approach grad school is pick one grad school that you're really interested in. And like that's kind of mid to lower range for you, such that like they'd really like to have you. And go to them and meet the professors, say that you're looking at this location for grad schools and you're filling out an application, and you're interested in the research programs, and this is my industry experience, and this is my undergrad experience, and I would want to see what professors I might be interested in doing research with. They'll remember you when the application process comes around, and you'll be able to write your application written to people who might very well be on your admission committee. And sometimes they'll hint at who that is. You can't ask them explicitly, but meeting the professors before your application is into them gives you a huge advantage. And if you have a stint in industry and you're not coming as an undergraduate, that could be very useful, which I guess that's not really your situation. But think letters of recommendation, think putting myself forward as a candidate that is going to work with faculty, because the point of grad programs is not to get good grades. The point of grad programs is to work with faculty. In grad school, you're an apprentice. That is the point. So fill your application out like you are an apprentice. So that's my suggestions. Anyway, Sam153 for $30. Cheers for the monologue. May the wrongdoer receive his comeuppance, Dave. Same with the anti-civ CDs and boomers. Watched Mixtape and was cringe but fascinated for reasons the devs didn't intend. It was hilarious. Well, thank you very much. I think that's the end of the super chats. Yeah, look, I'm pissed right now, but probably tomorrow I'll be a lot less pissed. But I just don't want to do business with that party anymore because of this interaction. Congratulations. I guess you didn't like me, because if you didn't, I might have liked your content, but I guess you didn't like me very much, because you certainly spent a lot of time convincing me not to like you. So I don't know what to say. I guess you don't want, whatever. Okay. I'm going to go on to the Psalm. Let's read Psalm 22, the one before the one that everyone reads. Why not, right? I just love the Psalms. It's just they're so great. I don't like to say I have a favorite part of the Bible, but the Psalms definitely come close. Look, if you read the Bible, and I don't read the Bible as regularly as I should, I'm Catholic, but you always have a favorite part. And I guess mine's probably the Psalms. I like Ecclesiastes too, but that's just like me being a modern person. All modern people like Ecclesiastes. I'm probably mispronouncing it even. Psalm 22, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? Oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not. And in the night season I am not silent. But thou art holy, O thou inhabitest the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee, they trusted, and thou didst deliver them. They climbed unto thee and were delivered. They trusted in thee and were not confounded. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. All that see me laugh to my scorn. They shoot out the lip, they shake their head, saying, he trusted on the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in his God. But thou art he that took me from my womb. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my brother's breast. I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help me. Many bulls have compassed me, strong bulls of Bashan have beset me all around. They gaped upon me with their mouths as ravening and the roarings of a lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax melted upon my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd. My tongue is cleavest to my jaw, and thou hast broughteth dust to my death. For dogs have compassed me, and the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garments among me, and cast lots upon my vesture. But me, not far from the Lord, O my strength, haste thee to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. I will declare of thy name upon my brethren, in the midst of the congregation will praise thee. Yea, that fear the Lord, praise him. All, yea, the seed of Jacob, glorify him and fear him. All, yea, the seed of Israel. For he hath not despised nor abhorred the afflicted, neither hath he hid his face from him. But he who has cried out is heard. My praise shall be of thee in the great congregation. I will pay my vows before him that fear the Lord. The meek shall eat and be satisfied. They shall praise the Lord that seek him. Your heart shall live forever. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto the Lord, and all the kindreds of the nation shall worship before thee. For the kingdom is the Lord, and he is the governor upon the nations. All they that be fat upon the earth shall eat and worship. All they that go down to the dust shall bow before him, and none can keep alive his own soul. A seed shall serve him, it shall be accounted to the Lord's generation. They shall come and shall declare his righteousness unto the people that shall be born, that he has done this to their end. Thank you very much, folks, for joining me for this Fiddler's Green podcast number 54. I can tell that last psalm was very much directed at the Zoomers in the audience, but I will be doing this again in 2 weeks. Until then, probably I'll have an essay out, and I guess after that, I'll be at the conference.